Hey everyone, I hope that wasn't too loud because that felt quite loud in my headphones. So if that was, I do apologise if I've just blown out all your earphones and stuff. But that can happen with this. But yeah, thanks for joining us here. I got Mark Dainty from Not Board Gaming. We're doing our top 10 solo games, and I just want to get some feedback from you during the show. Normally, StreamYard only does this in 720p because it's annoying, they're stingy, and their plans only allow for 720p res. I can upgrade to 1080p, but it costs an arm and a leg. But I'm on a trial for 7 days, so this one is actually streaming in full HD, and I might do a personal live show later in the week and do that one the same. So I'll be very curious to know if the resolution difference is noticeable between videos, because if it is, I might consider trying to, up the Patreon a bit and try and get it upgraded, because it would be nice to get proper HD streaming. But yeah, it seems to be a valuable commodity. Anyway, that aside, we've got our top 10 solo games to do and talk about Tricky. Everybody's been banging on at me to update my list because it's like 3 years ago since I last did a top 10 solo games list, and there's a lot of games I like to play solo. So trying to get this down to like 10 games, let alone rank them, was nigh on impossible. The list was just endless, and I feel bad that there's a lot of them I haven't got on the list. So I think our honorable mentions is probably going to be longer than the top 10. But so much so that we might actually consider doing a second live video where we do top 10 Euro solo games, just so that we can actually, I don't know, cover more games than we would, because I think I definitely go down the thematic route, and Mark's kind of a bit of both. But
yeah,
although mildly annoyingly, not a massive deal, but Mark has spoilt his list to me because I normally try and get surprised, but this time I'm not so much surprised. Mark's already told me what he's going to say. We'll just rag on him later for it. So no, that's all good, mate. We got plenty enough. James, Phil, Surf, Chloe, James, Andy, Christoph, Klaus. Thanks for joining us on here. And obviously, I know that
everybody.
Yeah, and I know this is streaming, like 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, which means that for the Americans, it's probably a bit of a nightmare to get in touch with them. But you can always watch this afterwards, and if it's still a problem, then, well, blame Mark, because he's the one who picked the time. So,
yeah, damn my family for having commitments. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, it's just this is the advantage of being single and alone. Actually, no, that makes me sad. But yeah,
so before we start, Luke, can I just make sure that everybody there can hear my audio? Okay, so if you guys can give me the thumb up about my audio, because I know in some previous streams with Paul, I had a bit of an issue with my audio there. So if anyone wants to respond in the chat.
Well, Surf says that it looks and sounds amazing so far, and to be honest, I'm noticing the resolution is a bit better as well, but it is an extra $20 a month equivalent to upgrade to 1080p. So yeah, I either need a few more Patreons or I need a good reason to justify that price increase, because it's not the cheapest thing just to do normal. But yeah, as Mark said, we've had problems on some of the Paul Grogan streams on Gaming Rules that we've done, although I put that down more to Paul's Somerset internet coupled with Mark's internet shared with a family.
I bought some new repeaters this week, so my house is now fully 5 gigahertz throughout the entire house with a fantastic download rate. So it should be better.
That works, and it does seem to be working better on your phone. I mean, I've got the heavens are opening up outside here, so it should be fine. But you're on my stupidly fast BT internet, so this should have less problems than Paul's, although even my streams get the occasional glitch now and again. But so we struggled to get I struggled anyway, I don't know about you, but yeah, getting 10 games for this was just nigh on impossible to whittle it down. So I feel bad for the ones that aren't on the list. I tried to consider, do I like these games in multiplayer as well? Would I play these games multiplayer or anything like that? And it's just I couldn't quite tell the best way to do it.
For me, as a predominantly solo gamer, obviously it's a little bit more focused for me. But this is my top 10 as of today. As of the time that I wrote the list, in an hour's time, that could change. This time tomorrow, the list could change, and that's kind of beauty about these lists. Is they're very subjective, depending on a lot of factors. But I tried to think about the 10 games that I would never want to leave my collection as a solo player. Now, there are more than 10 games. As you say, the hard part was whittling it down to just 10. But hopefully, I think I've got a fairly good spread on the types of games that I like in my list.
Yeah, this is. I mean, this one probably won't surprise a fair few people because it's not too dissimilar from a top 100 in a sense, but there are a couple of differences. But I tried to think, all right, maybe if I make it so that it's not games where the solo is just essentially the multiplayer played by yourself. But then I realized that would cut out most of my favorite games, so
Yeah.
that didn't work. So the best way we could do is just accept this is like the all-time 10 favorite, and then we'll do a Euro-centric one because I know that one will be a bit different to what we do there. Otherwise, Lord knows how we're going to do this. Yeah, well, well, we can only hope. Anyway, we'll get on with it because we obviously want to talk about a lot of games after we've done this list. So, onwards. So, shock me, Mark, with your number 10.
Shock you, even though you've seen it already. Well, up here,
yeah, exactly.
Just here, you can see the big box of the game I'm going to discuss at my number 10. And it's not everybody's favourite game, and I get that. And it's a pure and utter kind of sometimes random dice fest, if you like. And that is Eldritch Horror by Fantasy Flight Games. I've tried Arkham Horror 3rd Edition, didn't do anything for me. But as soon as I tried Eldritch Horror, there was just something about it. You know, I knew it had been out a while. I think I got it about 18 months ago. I knew it had been out a while. And I kind of and ahed about it. And then I got the base game. And then I got a couple of the small expansions. Then I ended up going all in. I got the big kind of storage box behind me that you see. And I have a wonderful time just having an adventure with Eldritch Horror. It's a dice fest. It's a random dice fest, which is mitigable. But there's just something about it. It tells a really good kind of world-traveling, Cthulhu-beating story for me. And I like the fact that you can bring in, as your characters die, you can bring in other characters to try and complete the game. For me, I'm not a huge Cthulhu fan. I'm not a huge Fantasy Flight fan. But this, for me, is kind of the epitome of these types of games for me. I just like everything about it. I still haven't played it with anybody else yet. I played this purely solo.
Really?
Yeah. I've tried all the. I will get it to the table with my wife at some point. But when I know I've got a couple of hours, it's one of the games that will hit my table fairly frequently. I will just put it out, and I know I'm going to have a good time, win or lose, and that's the thing about it.
I suppose, actually, that shouldn't shock me because most of your games you play solo and without other people, so I'll get over that. But I've got the stupid crate up there with like all of my old Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror stuff in there, and it's just like, getting it out is a nightmare for setup. I mean, I'm trying to use wherever they are, like the 3rd edition Arkham Horror a little bit more just for easier setup, but even then, that's not exactly 5 minutes to get it on the table. So presumably this is your favourite of the Arkham ones, so you probably never latched to the 3rd edition then.
So no, I bought the 3rd edition. I played it about 3 or 4 times, and it just felt too long for me. And I know it's possibly got a better connected story in it. You've got the codex system, which works very well in Arkham Horror 3rd edition.
I do like that one.
But for me, the game just felt a bit flabby and bloated, and I didn't enjoy the experience when I played it. And every time I was playing it, I was thinking, I'd kind of much rather be playing Eldritch with this than this. So I ended up getting rid of Arkham Horror 3rd edition. I know you love the LCG, the Arkham Horror LCG. And I've got some of that to the core game and some of the expansions. And again, it just doesn't bite me in that way. I probably haven't played it in about 12, 13 months now. But for me, this is just the epitome of everything I want from a Cthulhu-type Fantasy Flight game. The exploration, the sense of adventure, the growth of your characters, or the kind of shrinking of your characters as you get kind of curses and whatnot, really, really kind of just sings to me. And I just thoroughly enjoy everything about this game.
It is a solid one. I mean, I don't know which one I prefer out of 3rd Ed and Eldritch, but they sort of scratch slightly different itches, but both of them are still solid, although they're all bloated. I don't think any of them are not bloated, especially, I mean, Eldritch by now has got so many expansions, it's kind of ridiculous. I personally use 2 investigators at a time. How many do you use?
I use 2 as well. I have tried it with 3. I prefer 2, basically. I like the interplay with 2. 3 just becomes a little bit more cumbersome to manage for me, so I always use 2.
Oh, but that, and I think we've already mentioned the main differences there. I mean, this one feels more like an adventure game with Cthulhu in it, whereas the other games feel like Cthulhu with other stuff in it, because this one is more of a world story. But they're all pretty solid, and I do like just the amount of different content that there is, whether I pick a sideboard or not. This one does pretty well.
And I
Okay,
think that, for this, I think one of the final thing I want to say on it is they kind of close the cycle on it at the right time. I know there's no more expansions for Eldritch Horror, and it feels that's the right thing to do.
I feel like they could have done it a bit earlier, but there's a lot of expansions.
Yeah, there are a lot of expansions. I've got them all. But it's I'm glad there's no more content for it now.
I just wish they would just go to the thing of like, look, can we just give us more of the good stuff? The small box expansions for this Eldritch Horror are miles better than any of the big box ones. Because you don't have to learn an entire new board full of stuff.
Yeah, it just tweaks the rule sets for you a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, they're much more better on that. All right, my 10 is literally the first one in here that is solo only. And there's a couple I considered. This one I think I slightly prefer just because it's a little quicker, a little simpler, and maybe the theme of it just appeals to me a bit more just for being light and fluffy, really. And I think you hate this one. I can't remember, but from what I can't remember if you do or not. But for me, I still enjoy playing a nice little simple game of Coffee Roaster every now and again. I couldn't remember if this was one you hated or not. I know some people
there was somebody on the stream, I think, when we did the Paul Grogan stream, that didn't like Coffee Roaster. But yeah, I think it's a great little bag builder.
Yeah, it is just nice and good. I mean, this is the Stronghold version, which I must admit, I do have this one because my other one was slightly beat up, but I'm almost slightly regretting getting rid of the Korean one because that artwork, cartoony, like very bright, I think that was nicer artwork, but this one looks more serious for like the coffee mug and that. So I don't know, tomato. You can kind of pick your poison. They both are identical games. I don't believe there is any mechanical difference between them, but this just nice little simple bag builder of, right, what coffee am I going to do? This one here, Trey Kwai, whatever that is. It's got its rating, it's got the starting tokens and what sort of stuff you can use and what you're aiming for.
Yep.
So you have your little roasting counter here to like how many turns you've got. You've got this board with all the different things you can do with the color tokens, and it's a case of draw tokens out of the bag and decide what you're going to do. You're going to combo them to do different effects, leave them there so that they level up the beans, and just continue on this until you decide you want to pour your little cup of coffee. And then at that point, you just draw 10 tokens out of the bag. I think it's 10, something like that on this thing.
Yep.
And hope that you can make the coffee as close to like the high star ratings as you get. And it makes no difference if you fail it miserably or not. At the end of the day, you're just trying to, you're just trying to have a little bit of lighthearted fun with it. There's the Korean one, and I don't know, something about me just likes that cartoonish artwork.
I've got the modern one, not the Korean one. That looks great, that, doesn't it? And I think I picked this up at Essen in 2019, and it's fine. It doesn't hit my table that much now. In fact, if I want to play Coffee Roaster, I tend to use the app these days. There is an app. It's a little bit clunky. You kind of have to know the game to play the app, but it works okay. But yeah, it's a fine bag builder. I think if I was looking at bag builders, I'd probably prefer to go with Bullet over Coffee Roaster. But this is a fine solo game, and certainly for Sunday morning, cup of coffee, bagel, bacon sandwich, whatever you're having, it's ideal.
Yeah, well, I'm not usually cooking with breakfast and then playing this, but yeah, I have played this in a coffee shop once, so I did just purposely try that.
Nice and thematic, I like that.
To go with it, but yep, nice and light on there. Very quick one from Patient. How much time do you guys spend each week playing board games? Far too much.
Yeah, not as much as I'd like. With work and with my family, board games tend to come late at night for me most of the times, other than at weekends. So I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 hours a week sometimes. But I tend to split my sessions up, so I maybe play for 30 minutes, go and do something else, come back and carry on playing, etc.
It varies. I mean, I've got a couple of clubs I go to. Some mates of mine meet on Tabletop Simulator on the odd nights. I've got solo games that I play. Obviously, trying to get stuff for review. I might just say, look, I've got Saturday morning, just people want to meet up in my local cafe and we just spam this game like crazy. It's one of those things where it's just a lot of time gets taken up with these. Yeah. All right. Well, without further ado, on to nines.
Do you want me to go first?
It's always the guest goes first, and I got to admit, as much as you did spoil your list, I can't fully remember where it is until I look it up on the banners here.
So this for me is a game where you absolutely need the expansion to play solo.
Mandatory.
It's mandatory, absolutely, yeah. And it's got that most hated mechanism in it as well, which is roll to move, should I say? But for me, it works fantastically well, and I'm talking about Zia Legends of a Drift System, or Zaya Legends of a Drift System, with the Embers of a Forsaken Star expansion. Now, I got this game a couple of years ago, and I went through all the various rule books that you got to do to learn it solo, and it is going through 2 or 3 different rule books to learn the solo, and then with the upgraded market, etc. But every time I put this out on my table, I know I'm having an adventure, a proper sandboxy type adventure. And it is in parts infuriating because the dice can be really, really, really awful to you and really cruel to you as well. But I like everything about it. It's pick up and deliver, it's market and market manipulation. It's kind of upgrading your ship and trying to get the best ship and trying to kind of maximize on your objectives. Your objectives at the beginning of the game may not be the same as they are kind of halfway through, and you've got to decide, am I going to be more of a trader or am I going to go down the combat route? The AI works nicely in this game as well. You've got the various kind of AI that come after you. And it takes up a lot of table real estate, but I have a great time when I'm playing Zia Legends of a Drift System. In fact, I think this is probably going to be my game I'm going to get to the table tomorrow. I've not played it in maybe 3 or 4 months now, and I'm ready for a good game of Zia Legends of a Drift System. I know you only got this year, didn't you, Luke?
I got it earlier this year. It's still on the shelf downstairs. I mean, you're going to need to relearn those rules, because that's one thing that does keep it from hitting the table a bit, is the fact that it's not the easiest barrier to entry when it comes to the rules, especially once you've added the expansion in, which you have to, because you can't play it solo without the expansion, which means you've got to have all those extra bits in there. But I've got it downstairs. It's got a folded space insert, which, trust me, if you play this game enough, you need that insert. It is like
got that this
essential.
Year as well. It's, I went through 18 months of not having that, and then I bit the bullet, got the folded space insert, and spent 3 hours gluing it all together and sticking my fingers together. But boy, does it make a difference, yeah.
There's so many pictures of just random pieces. Does nobody put like gameplay pictures anymore? That would make more sense. That's a good one.
There we go.
I get what you said about the artwork. The artwork in this, people sort of go and say, "Oh, don't you like the look of Eclipse?" No, because Eclipse looks bland, boring, and dull. Have you seen? If I introduced that to a child and said, "Look, do you want to go explore space when you're older?" If I showed them Eclipse, they'd find it boring as hell, and they would not go near it. But that is what I want planets to look like. This and Empires of the Void 2 is kind of that level of nice looking planetary space. I am exploring. I do enjoy this one thematically. It's one of those games where it's a hard one for me to place it, because there are some things that irk me, like the roll and move and the especially the damage roll randomness that you get in there. That D10 and take a ton of damage is somewhat punishing, and the solo automna is a bit on the tricky side to catch up with, unless you are doing spamming there. So it's a weird one to sort of place, but I do enjoy it just for the story I'm telling. Like, I'm less concerned about the AI and more just like, look, let's just have fun wandering around space and doing stuff.
And that's what it does for me. It tells me this, I make up my story, if you like, as I'm going through space, and say maybe a mercenary, or maybe a smuggler or whatever. And it does really help build that theme. You've got to allow yourself to shift with the theme as the game progresses. It's very difficult to right at the beginning to pick one particular way that you want to go and maintain that for the entire game. But at some point, you do have to kind of pee or get off the pot, because otherwise you won't be able to upgrade your ship in the right way. And I love it. And you're absolutely right. It's on when it's on the table, you're putting those tiles down, you're creating this wonderful sandbox vista of what's bright coloured space, and you're kind of warping into a star or something like that and dying and what have you. And it's great fun.
Oh, man, gotta admit, the whole thing of like, I can go pick up cubes from this planet and deliver to this planet. Who wants to play this game and play it that way? No, if I'm doing this, I usually tend to explore the map and go find all the cool phenomena stuff. I tend to do missions, and then if I'm feeling brave, I tend to go shoot people up. That tends to be it. The last thing I want to do in this game is ever do the pick up and deliver cube thing. So the market barely ever gets touched. Very quick one, Gabby. Do you often have decision paralysis on which games to pull out and play at any given time? Yes, every single time. How do I manage this in any way? I don't, frankly. Yeah. It's just frankly a case that we have too many games to play, and trying to decide is an absolute nightmare.
I agree wholeheartedly. And, sometimes I'll go a couple of days with the desire to play a game, but I've lost the will to choose a game at the same time. And it's kind of frustrating, that it is. And sometimes, again, I just don't play games for a few days and then just get one off the shelf and try and play that just to break that cycle. But it can be overwhelming, absolutely.
Alrighty, right on my 9. I debated a lot about whether this should make my list, considering it's one of the newest games I've played, and also because the solo mode in it is pretty much exactly the same as multiplayer, just tweak the timing rule. That's kind of all it is, really. But I did play it to death last month in terms of playing it on solo. It is definitely one of my favorite games at the moment, and even though it's probably lower down this list mainly because it's so close to multiplayer. Like, I will gladly play this with 2 or 3 players, fine. But playing Ark Nova solo, though, has been most of my December, frankly. Just constantly playing this on a solo level, because it literally, all it does is gives you a fixed time of when you've got to get to your ending thing. So, like, your ending condition. Other than that, you're playing the same game of going through, getting the animal cards, the funky action selection mechanic. All of it is like giving me what I want from the game. All I'm losing is just a little bit of interaction with the players as to like what symbols they've got, nicking my projects, the green projects, that sort of thing. So that's probably why it's not as high on the list, because it doesn't feel like it was really a solo mode. It's just, I'm just playing the game by myself. I know it sounds weird, but I get a ton of enjoyment from this. So I thought, no, I gotta get it on my top 10 because I'm playing it solo. I play it once and then I'm like on Tabletop Simulator. It's like, have I got time to play it again?
And I think that's the beauty about Ark Nova. Now, the only reason, and I'm not burying the lead here, the only reason it's not on my list is that I don't own a physical copy. So I've only played.
Nor do I yet.
Yeah. I've only played the physical copy once with you at GridCon, and then I played maybe 6, 7, 8 times on Tabletop Simulator. And it's the very definition of a fantastic adaptive solo puzzle, this. And I think that's why the solo works. It's not a complex AI to work with the solo. It works if you know the rules of the game, which aren't that difficult to learn, really. Then the solo slots in very, very nicely to this. Now, if you put this alongside a game like Terraforming Mars, which I don't enjoy, I'd pick this any day of the week. And had I got a physical copy of this, not only would have this made my top 10, probably top 1 or 2 of my top 10 solo games released in 2021, it would probably definitely be on this list, because I got an itch to go back to it almost every time I kind of fire up the computer. But because I don't own a physical copy, I personally couldn't put it on there.
I mean, I haven't got my physical copy yet, but I've ordered it, so I might as well have the thing. But honestly, before I did my review, I mean, besides playing it on TTS a lot, I played it 3 times at GridCon, because I only expected to play it with my friends the once when we were learning it. Then I jumped into a 3-player game with the 2 other people who were asking for a player, and I had no one to play with. It's like, I'll jump in, that one's nice. And then, much to my friend's annoyance, it's like you requested it and somehow managed to find a free slot, which was somewhat impressive. And like, fine, I guess I'll teach it a 3rd time. I mean, woe is me. I didn't have much else to do, I guess.
But yeah, it is a beautifully slick game, and I think as it starts getting released so people can buy it in the next kind of month or so, we'll start to see this feature a lot, I think, on social media. And certainly, I think top 10 lists at the back end of this year, I think it will feature highly on a lot of people's top 10 lists.
It needs to, yeah. It's just distribution was a pain, and Asmodee messed up the UK distribution, so it's not gone as well there. But if you do get a chance to like load up on Tabletop Simulator or something, then definitely worth giving it a try. Alrighty, Whoop. Where have I lost my place? Here we go.
Number 8, and I've got a feeling this may feature on your list, and I'm not too sure. I know you're a relatively new convert to this, but it's for me, it's the very definition of a beer and pretzels game. The rules, they're not that cumbersome to learn. Basically, it plays very slick, very fast, and it gives you that feeling of an 80s style arcade game. And of course, I'm talking about Street Masters Aftershock. When I say Aftershock, I've got everything for Street Masters so far.
Yes, in general.
Yeah, it is just an absolutely cracking solo game. If you're to play it with more people, it's a co-op game. But generally, as a solo player, I play as one fighter. Yes, you can play as 2 or more fighters, but I generally play as one fighter. And it is Double Dragon. It is going along, beating up bad guys, getting to an end, get kind of the big boss and defeating that bad boss. It's the Sadler Brothers. It's Blacklist game, so it's using the MDS, the modular deck system, and it's possibly the peak of the modular deck system for me. I've enjoyed Brook City, and I've enjoyed the. I know they've got Hour of Need coming to back us shortly, and Dire Alliance, etc. But this, for me, just works fantastically well. Everything about it falls into place. It is an arcade game in board game format. I just love Street Masters. I think it's just, say, the very definition of a beer and pretzels game for me.
It does retain that theme so well. If you like Street Fighter, Streets of Rage, and all that lot, Tekken, not so much Mortal Kombat, more the ones that are slightly more grounded in reality, even though some people shoot fireballs and stuff, and there's pandas and that. But there is a panda character, yeah. It does at least it's more about the martial arts than it is like, any Yori weapon stuff. Although I find it slightly weird that this guy's used an Arkham Horror LCG playmat in order to showcase
freaking
Street
you
Masters.
out.
Yeah, like the tentacles just didn't quite mesh with what going into this. But yeah, I mean, this one I got taught at GridCon, and afterwards I decided, I'm going to play this. And like when somebody finally taught me it, and thankfully they did, so it was like, oh great, when am I ever going to get this game? Well, I decided, oh look, somebody on Facebook was going to sell their entire Aftershock pledge. Fine, yoink. It cost me a pretty penny, and I had to, my friends had to go to Northampton to see their mates and pick this one up for me en route. But definitely worth it. Each of these, and I think the rule set is not that complicated with this, even with the content that's in it. I don't care about the story and the campaign stuff. That looks a bit fiddly, and I hear from people who play this a lot that's actually not the fun way to do this. Most people will play this as a skirmish style game, which is fine. But with this, that fighter turn thing, that is pretty much all the rules you need to know and what your cards do. But you've only got about 20 cards in your deck or something, like 20, 25 cards, and there's duplicates. So, but I love how
you fight the bad guy, you fight the setting as well. So the scenario that you're in at the same time as well, that has things coming in. The great things, like the little loot cards as well, which really give you that bonus of Streets of Rage, picking up a chicken leg or whatever it was.
I knew you were. I knew you were going to say that. When I got taught it, I made such a thing. Like the first loot card I found was a roast turkey dinner. It's like yes, I feel good. As a bad guy, you just mind a sec. It's a little bit slow, but all these cards there, like all these different characters which are unique, because similar to another game I like, it's great when it's like, right, this is my character, this is my deck, my cards, I'm deciding I'm going to play Megan, who, like I say, not the name I would necessarily give a superhero character, but she's effectively Sonya Blade is the closest thing I can think of to her. She's she has lots of tactics, all about chi, does a lot of kicks, very mobile. But if I'm playing her, my teammate is playing like the equivalent of Ryu, and we're playing completely different styles of play. And I can just basically go, right, I want a different stage, the hospital. I want a different enemy, all right, Blanca, or whatever it is, that guy name is, the kingdom. And, right now I'm going to pick this guy who's a pro wrestler. And I want to get up close and personal. There you go, there's the panda. It's legit. Although, I don't know who that's meant to be. I don't remember there being a Harley Quinn in this game.
Yeah, in one of the Aftershock things, I think it is. It's some of the bad guys. It's one of the minions from the bad guys.
Ah, right. But now, although, interesting one for there is that Arkham has streets where you can street fight. Not sure if I'm gonna let that pass for a tentacle play map, but
and I think the good thing about this is you can play a game in about 45 minutes. So it doesn't outstay its welcome, basically.
Well, when you know what you're doing, 45 minutes. I've never got it that fast. But yeah, I mean, we're talking like a 90-minute max game when you're learning, like flicking to rule books and stuff. Once I'm a bit more confident with it, then granted, I can certainly, I think, get it down to that level. But yeah, it's working well for me so far.
Good.
All right, on my 8. Right, we're actually... I think this is the last Euro I've got on my... Well, actually, I don't know. One of them you might be able to debate as a Euro or not later, but this is definitely, I think, the first the last pure loader that we got. I like a sandbox game. Sandbox games where I get to decide what I want to do, great. And there's quite a few of them, but we're talking a heavy sandbox here. We're talking probably Rosenberg's best game, in my opinion. I know this is not shared with a few others who might decide otherwise, but you give me, just do whatever you please, get points for nearly everything, while having a fun farming theme, then you give me Fields of Arle. Okay. Because this one can only go up to 3 players anyway, and that's when you have the expansion tea and trade in it. Otherwise, it's only a 1 or 2 player game. And it's a worker placement, so having multiplayer in it just essentially has you competing on this area for the different tools and actions that you do. But the rest of it, all these buildings, this player board is yours, this like villages board is yours, your storage is there, everything else is just basically your stuff. And I'm deciding how I'm going to get points this game from, like, let's see, shall I export, put it to the local villagers, chop a bunch of trees down, get some peat, get animals maybe, grow some corn, like, dehydrate the boars, get to the dock. I could just level up my tools. Well, I wouldn't mind these buildings. Maybe I should make some coats, get some cows. You can do whatever the hell you like in this. It's like a never-ending array of options. Anybody with analysis paralysis, stay the hell away from me if you want to play this game, because you will struggle to cope with it. And most of the pictures will be German. I'm trying to find like some better showcase ones, but these actions here where you've got these counters, they're the different actions, but each one has a tool. So when you go to the action, what you get from it depends on how high your tool is.
Yeah.
And you can upgrade these tools from the workbenches, but you might decide to ignore some entirely, or you might think, well, you know what? I want to get a lot of food. I've got a building that's good for fish. Maybe I should actually upgrade my fishing nets and do that. So it does such a good job of just giving me a classic, just do what you like. It's points. And
so I think I've only played one Rosenberg game, and I've got it, and I've got the expansion for it, and that is Feast for Odin.
Yeah,
that's Rosenberg, isn't it? So I've got Norwegian. Still haven't played with the Norwegians expansion yet, and I like it fine. And I got the Norwegians expansion because I think you were one of the main kind of proponents of you've got to get the expansion for it. So I am looking forward to getting that out again. But yeah, I've never, other than Feast for Odin, I've never played any other Rosenberg games, and that's possibly a gap in my repertoire that I need to fill at some point. But this looks, it looks fine. It looks like a good thinky Euro.
It's got a thinky one for the options. I like Feast of Odin fine. It is still on the shelf. And yeah, the Norwegian expansion is essential to balance it, because the base game kind of threw me off a little bit, but once I expanded it, it's like, oh no, this actually works better. I haven't got that out in a long time though. I don't know what it is. I do think the game is really good. I guess maybe it's the rule set, or maybe it's just the amount of components, or maybe I just prefer to get this one out. I don't know why Feast of Odin hasn't hit the table as much. Maybe because the theme's a little stronger in this one, because Feast of Odin is effectively Tetris with Viking stuff, which is like, what? It's like, why is it when I feed my guys the long bit of bread, that feeds them better than if I feed them a vertical piece of bread? It's just like, hey? It's like, come on. Although, it is on Board Game Arena now, as Carl said, so it certainly might make life a little bit easier for me to play it there. But just give it. This one is, as I say, I don't think I even listed out all the options there, because I think that was just base game options. You've got exporting to countries and making tea and getting little boats and stuff for the expansion. And even though you can play this with 2 or 3 players, and it works just fine. You've even got quick start rules to make it a little bit shorter. But you honestly could just play this solo and just say, you know what, boom. Here we go. And as much as I enjoy, say, Caverna, for example, I've never really felt like playing Caverna solo. I just like to have 3 or 4 of us building different caves and gunning for those worker placement spots. So if I've played Caverna solo, I don't know. It's the thing of, look, I acknowledge it's there and it's good, but then this exists. I'm not going to choose one over the other. This is the problem when you have too many games in a similar line of series. Take note, Board and Dice. It's you're always going to pick your 2 or 3 favorites. You're not necessarily go to all those ones. But that works on there. So fair enough. On to I'm on the wrong tab. That's never going to help. 7s.
Ooh, well, now this is a perennial on a lot of people's solo lists. I know it's not your favorite, and it's also it's a bit Marmite. It's a bit kind of people either like this game or don't like this game. I love this game. It's the first game I got when I got into modern board gaming. I decided I was going to get into gaming, and I decided I was going to do solo gaming, and it's the very first game I got. Talk about going in at the deep end. It is Mage Knight, and I got Mage Knight the Ultimate Edition. Now, I will always have a spot for Mage Knight within my top 10. There's a whole kind of love I've got for it, for introducing me to the hobby, introducing me to modern board games, introducing me to complex mechanics, and introducing me to my love of reading rule books as well. I absolutely adore reading. It's not Euthia, no.
How long is it going to take you? I can't keep this gag going much longer.
Uthia is not Mage Knight. Get that away. I love
All right.
Uthia, but
All right, here you go. There's
no,
Mage
it's not
Knight.
that one either as well. You're just being dogged, you. It is, again, I probably will never want to and never have played Mage Knight with other people. I can only imagine it being an absolute nightmare. And the amount of analysis paralysis I get from Mage Knight, where I spend 10 or 15 minutes going through my best move, then realizing it's not going to work and have to, take all my cards back and try something else. It's a puzzle. It's a wonderful, glorious tile laying exploration, RPG style upgrading puzzle that is absolutely not for everybody. The rule book is a trial by fire to get through. I think I spent 4 days reading the rule book. And even now, many plays into Mage Knight, I probably still only play it 90-95% correctly. I will invariably get rules wrong. And I don't care because I have such a great time with Mage Knight. And I think I'm enjoying it that much. If I get the odd rule wrong, it doesn't matter. It's my game. I'm playing it my way. Absolutely adore it. It will always have a spot in my top 10.
I definitely side with that. Yeah, if you get a rule wrong, big whoop, as long as you had fun playing it. But so I like the fact that I joked about comparing it to Uthia and that. Edgar said, yeah, you misspelled Star Trek Frontiers because it's the same game again.
Well, I'm not a Star Trek fan. I know that Frontiers is a slightly stripped back version of Mage Knight. And I do want to try Star Trek Frontiers just to see if it gives me that same feel. But no, Mage Knight nails everything for me.
What was that? I know Paul at Game Rules, as James says, loves it, and yeah. But honestly, Paul knows I hate Mage Knight as well, so it's like I tell him to his face. What's he gonna do?
And this time next year, Mage Knight may well be higher on my list if I play it more times in 2021 in 2022 than I did in 2021. But it's always going to be on the list for me.
Well, you better get started on rereading the rules again if you've got to take 4 days to do it. It's like, it's just like. I did not gel with this game at all. I mean, it was complicated as all get out. I just remember wandering aimlessly around, wondering where the story was, and then I got eaten by a drake or something. I can't remember. It's like I just remember like oh, I got eaten by a drake. All right, hang on, let's rewind that a bit. Clearly, for some reason, I wasn't meant to go in that cave. It was a village. Something happened. How does this deck building work again? I got no idea. There's a castle wall. French guy comes over and says, hello, who is it? It's
multi-use cards. You love multi-use cards. This is
I do like that.
Multi-use cards.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, that aspect was fine. I just couldn't understand. I couldn't get immersed in it because I just didn't find that thematic pull. It's the thing of, because when you get into your fantasy games, definitely the difference we two have is that what is it? The ones where it feels more like a Euro game, but we've put the fantasy theme on it, or something, they're the ones that you gun for. Like I mentioned, Uthia, which to me does feel like Mage Knight Express. But then with me, it will be like, I need the fantasy thematic story, then put the mechanics on top. So, and it's just a case of which, whether you fall into column A or column B, really.
Absolutely. So this has many similarities with Zia, or Zia more than anything, in the fact that you make that story up yourself as you go along. There is an end objective in here, be that to sack a couple of castles or whatever. But yeah, I'm okay with filling the blanks in myself. But again, it's totally okay if that's not for people as well, because some people like the story and the narrative to be there, to have the mechanics linked onto. So yeah, I totally understand why, for many reasons, Mage Knight doesn't work for a lot of people. All I can say for me is I just adore almost everything about it.
I say you don't agree with my feeling that Uthia is Mage Knight light, do you?
No. It's got tile laying, and that's it. There's no deck construction, deck building in Uthia at all. It's more focused on kind of upgrading your character, going from combat to combat in Uthia.
But don't you do that in this as well?
Ish, but you're going towards this kind of, you're building up your character in different ways here by having this, this increasing amount of cards that you're going to increase your deck by, and you're taking on the wounds, etc., which have a totally different feel. So I can see why people would say that Uthia and Mage Knight are linked. You're laying down these tiles and expanding, etc., but they play very, very differently. I'd say Uthia is almost more arcadey than Mage Knight, which is definitely more kind of
that makes sense. Yeah, it does feel a bit more like that, but maybe it's because like both have got a fantasy setting, and I don't know the difference between the two of them or something. Yeah. Maybe that was a thing, because even like going around these like terrain hexes, your map can be whatever you like in that. Although Uthia definitely has more of the City of Kings feel, which is the everything can have whatever power it feels like or so. Because I remember that was the butt of my jokes when you
Well,
were
yeah, it
teaching
does
that
have
one to
that.
me, wondering why a pig. I'm level 1. I come across a pig and it knows psionic mind control. It's like what? It's like...
Why wouldn't it? Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. Youth Year is more procedural, if you like, in creating its monsters. It is staged, so you have your kind of level 1, level 2, and level 3 monsters. So it is staged in Youth Year, but it is more procedural as you're pulling out a monster and then the various effects that thing can do. Yeah.
Maybe I got the setup wrong there, because whatever I found in that cave just killed me outright. So I don't think that was a level 1 creature. That's for certain.
Wasn't it like a dragonfly when I taught you the game that was killing you in
Well,
Youth Year?
in Euphia, we were getting... You had a shadow beast, which I could actually believe, oh yeah, that actually might have these powers. But I was having trouble killing pigs and dragonflies. It's like, seriously? This is supposed to be like fantasy epic game. And these dragonflies have got worse powers and curses than most bosses in Diablo games. It's like ridiculous. Alrighty. Although on the subject of campaign fantasy, I mean, this is going... Actually, literally, this is the column A and column B differentiation. It's like, right, you want the Euro game with the fantasy on, or do you want the fantasy with the mechanics added? This one is still going strong. I've got the latest campaign Spreading War for this one, I believe it's called. I've yet to actually get it to the table, though, just because of time. But I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and so I've definitely... pretty much, I think, solely only played this solo. I don't think I've ever taken a group or somebody else out with journeys in Middle-earth, but it gives me exactly the flavour of Lord of the Rings I want, bar one other game we'll mention maybe later, but the fact that this also uses the app technology, which I think works for a lot of these games if the app is done well. There are examples where they're not, but I've could choose whatever character combination I like. The stories have been getting better and better. I admit that the base set campaign was kind of like a solid foundation, but maybe not necessarily the best example. But when DLCs and future expansions came out, they did a lot more with branching paths, really like giving you some story-based missions. Like I think the last one I did, there's a lot of times where a couple of missions where I'm literally talking to different elves and trying to negotiate, what's the plan of attacking that. It's like, oh, there's not actually a combat here. There's actual dialogue and different options that I do with these. It's more diplomacy, and that's cool because I want that in some of my campaign games, not just, oh, there's the big ogre, go and kill it. The little deck building part of it I quite like as well. It is, in a sense, simulating a die roll, like drawing cards off your deck and see how many successes you've got, but I can still tailor that deck a bit to what I want it to do. Like, I want this cool card, but it doesn't give me a success icon on it. It's like, but still useful for other things. And when you've gone through some of your deck and you've drawn a lot of those successes, that the next test you're going to do is likely to fail or have problems unless you can shuffle things back in. So there's a few other parts in there. If anything, the only irritation I had with this game is when this applies to a lot of these style games, is when it sets up the map.
Yeah.
It's like, you turn a corner, right, find tile 406, 210, 100, 1010. It's like, come on, it's like, seriously.
But where, and Man vs. Meeple just asked the question on here about this and the new Descent. And if you look at the kind of 3 games from Fantasy Flight, similar, you've got Mansions of Madness, you have this, and of course you have the new Descent. Now, I've had all 3 of them. I've recently sold Mansions of Madness and Lord of the Rings. I prefer Descent, and I think for quite a few reasons. I don't think this is a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. Me and my wife played through quite a lot of the campaign, then I played through quite a lot solo as well. But I think where Descent gets it really good in the app, obviously it does a lot of the heavy lifting, but it tells you where you need to put tiles so you're not going to run out of table space, which I don't think is on Lord of the Rings.
No.
But for me, out of the 3 games, Mansions of Madness, this, and Descent, I much prefer Descent. Strip away the 170 quid price tag and what have you.
Well, that's a big ask.
Yeah, but when it comes down to the game itself, if you strip away that price tag, then I get more enjoyment out of Descent. I'm rereading Lord of the Rings at the moment. I like Lord of the Rings fine enough, but I don't know. I have a better time with Descent than I did with this. So I made the decision just before Christmas to get rid of this and keep Descent, and I'm looking forward to Descent growing. But there is nothing wrong with this game at all if you like this type of game, if you don't mind app integrated games. And I think, if you do, you're never going to like this game.
Okay, you gotta have some app integration. Although, like I say, you've sold this and mansions and kept Descent, I've done the complete opposite.
There we go. Yeah.
I had to force myself to finish that campaign. I was getting a bit like annoyed with it after a while or something. Give it a, what did I give it? I think I gave it a 6 or something. Yeah, it does have some issue. Not to do with the app necessarily. The app I do think's really, really good at it. I think it was just more the story and like the story and characters and some of the games, and that having to set it up was always a pain in the butt. I know it gives you the grid, like, oh, you can, which I do like. I think more apps need to do it where it sort of gives you an idea of the table space. But man, you spend half the day, half of your campaign building the thing. It's like come on.
I think with this game, it came with, it works well within the Lord of the Rings kind of a world, if you like. But I was a bit tired of it by then as well. Having read the books a number of times and having watched the films a number of times, I was a little bit tired of the stories it was telling there. Whereas with Descent, yes, it's generic fantasy tropes, but at least it's something a little bit fresh for me. And I think that's why I enjoyed Descent more.
Yeah, I mean, I like the world with Lord of the Rings. I didn't read the books. I listened to the audio book of it, and blimey, I'm glad they adapted it slightly different for the films. They're not bad audio books, but for cry out loud, if you adapted it like properly from the books, Lord of the Rings would have been a musical. It literally is like nothing but songs. It's ridiculous.
Andy Serkis singing songs, yeah. So.
Oh god, yeah, that would have been quite there. I like. Before we go on to the next part, I do quite find this. Remember we were talking about the dragonflies as like Piet's one is like healing dragonfly kick.
There we go. Euthia strikes again, and that's the beauty of it for me is the unknown. Yeah.
Just the punishing nature of dragonflies. This is your level 1 creature. Forget it when you come across like the Dark Knight or like the demon from hell or something. No, a pig and a dragonfly is the bane of your existence. I don't know. Well, that's 7 6s. Keep this up.
Okay, so number 6 for me is a game. I recently did my top 10 solo releases in 2021. I think you could say it was a 2020 release, but it got delivered to me in 2021.
21, really, yeah.
Yeah, and I've got all these designers' games, and this was the first team up between Vital Lacerda and David Turksey, and it is Kanban EV. It is the absolutely quintessential Vital Lacerda solo game for me. It has the right level of challenge and challenge modifiers. You're controlling a couple of, let's say controlling, there are a couple of AIs. You've got Mr. Lacerda and Mr. Turksey, as well as Sandra as well. And it just
Sandra.
It hits every nail on the head for me in terms of what I want from a Vital Lacerda solo experience. And Vital himself, I think he prefers the Gallerist as his solo mode. I find Gallerist a nice puzzle, if you like. This feels like I'm playing a proper game. It's got a lose mechanism in there as well, so you can get fired. I have no interest in cars, no interest in, I don't want to manufacturing, so I have no interest in the Kanban method. But for whatever reason, many reasons, getting this out on the table, first of all, it looks great. It's Eagle Griffin. Secondly, that solo mode is really easy to implement if you understand how the base game works. And thirdly, it plays like an absolute charm. And I know when we did our video last year of the top 10 Lacerda solos, this was our number 1 solo that we discussed.
Out of the Lacerda ones, yes. I mean, it is definitely a very robust system. It probably would have been like top 20 for me. I did consider it, but easy to implement, hard to say. You still, much like everything else that Turksey does, you do have to read an extra 5 pages of rules to see what the AI does at these particular times. So it's not like I can instantly just whip out the solo mode if I'm familiar with the multiplayer game. But out of a lot of the stuff he's designed and out of the Lacerda solo modes, it's a clear winner. Because, I mean, I don't really go for Gallerist solo that much. It is more of a puzzle, that one, as opposed to a multiplayer experience simulated. This one does actually feel like a decent multiplayer game simulated, which is very tricky to do with AIs. Yeah. But, I mean, like I say, that definitely would have been a top 20 for me. I think the fact that I do love playing this multiplayer just as much as solo, like I get the same level of high enjoyment out of this game regardless, is probably why it wouldn't necessarily be a top 10 solo. And also the amount of times I'm likely to bring this out just to play it solo is not going to be often, because it is a bit of there's a lot to set up and stuff, it's
and I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the Turksey solo mode. There are decision trees in this, like in a lot of David Turksey's games, and you have to familiarize yourself with that. So it's kind of, if this happens, do this, but if not, then do this and do that, etc. So you familiarize yourself with the decision trees. Fortunately, unlike a lot of solo games and Lacerda solo games, this comes with a really useful solo reference guide as well, which helps you kind of just pick up on those things. But yeah, everything just falls into place absolutely fantastically for me. My favorite solo release of last year. And again, I can't see this really shifting from my top 10 list at any point.
Well, I think this is a solo mode in progress. So yeah, you got the different cards that they use and what each character does. I mean, you look at those solo cards and you think, what on earth is this talking about? And it's like, yeah, you gotta devote a little bit of time, a little bit of attention to what's going on. But it is definitely worth it. Like, I probably won't play any other Lacerda game solo, apart from maybe Lisboa. I don't know. Lisboa's solo wasn't too bad. But honestly, if it's like, well, I need to invest a lot of time into a solo, I'm going to pick Kanban over the other Lacerdas, like, instantly. It's back up to my favourite of the games, period, from him anyway, because it used to be Gallerist, while this was in its Stronghold edition form, when it was a bit harder to understand it. But when Eagle Griffin, not so much streamlined the game, but they at least made it easier to grasp. Like, the graphic design was much more improved with this version. It suddenly eclipsed Gallerist again or something, because like I say, unlike you, I love cars, so I'm more than happy to like make fun of like people going after the concepts or tiny little super minis, or I'm building my car here, you know, and getting advanced and just dodging Sandra. Like, everybody's had that annoying boss. It's always good. In fact, CAO. This is the one thing I don't like from this, though, and we talked about this in that live stream and that. If I play this, there's a condition, as you say, don't get fired, right? Yeah. And you're meant to effectively beat Lacerda and Turksey. There's the two conditions, okay? Don't lose, beat the two bots. That's it. I don't read any of this rubbish where it then says, now compare yourself to these ranking tiers, and if you don't meet all of them, you are an apprentice and you need to do better or something. Absolutely. Go away, sod off. I don't want these in my Eurogames, because I hate these. You know, I beat your two bots soundly. I got way more points than they did. Oh no, I had one less bank shift than that, and I didn't have like more than 2 tested designs or something like that. Woe is me, I'm clearly not good enough for this job. It's like, shut up. But
they're in all the Lacerda games, aren't they? And I understand why they're there. People want a measuring mechanism, but I really look at those, and it comes back to play your game your way. As long as you get enjoyment out of it, what does it really matter if you haven't achieved those?
Nah, that's why it does. I rant about it, but if people like it, fine, because I can ignore them and people can go for them. So either way, everybody wins. Alrighty, 6 on me. All right. Oh, funny enough, we were just talking about this a second ago. You might have sold yours. I ain't sold it. Oh no, I got a lovely little briefcase up there for this little gem of a game. Of course, I do love Mansions of Madness 2nd edition, because again, I've probably played this multiplayer twice in my lifetime, and it does take a bit too long when you have multiplayer in there, but I'm just like, right, it's not too cumbersome to control 3 investigators, which, in fact, I think I've even done it with 4, because honestly, you move them and they do their bits, but all you need to do is keep track of a few item cards and their stat sheet, and that's about it. It's like much less to juggle around than in others. But man, you want the most thematic Cthulhu game in existence? I can't think of anything better than this one. Even to Arkham Horror LCG, for all the credit it deserves, this one with the app, the ambient music, and the well-written stories. I love the story scenarios in this. You know, there's tons of them now. I don't think there's going to be any more official content for this game. I think if there's going to be any more, it will just be DLC. But frankly, I haven't even played every single scenario yet. There's quite a lot of them. But ones where you're going back in time, ones where you've got a murder mystery on a dirigible, you know, you're one where you're dealing with the Deep One hybrids, a typical Cthulhian mansion, one where you're kidnapped by the Silver Twilight Lodge and try to get out. There's a lot of different variety with these scenarios, and each one I love. Because now with all the content, I can mix and match the monsters. They essentially, you know, come out with different styles. But the only downside is that obviously time needs to have passed since I played a scenario last. Otherwise, I might know the overarching story.
Yep.
But then even then, it will still chop and change things. Like, it might say, right, you need to identify who this suspect is by the end. The suspect will still change. You know the gist. Okay, one of these did it, and I need to deal with them. but the conditions will change. So you can't game the system and think, well, last time it was so and so, so it's probably them again. No, it might not be. There may be tweaks in who said what, so you still got to pay a little bit of attention.
Yeah.
Not that I tend to repeat a scenario that quickly after played it, but as I say, I've still got to get through them all. But
it's an absolutely fine game, and again, it does what it needs to do, and you're absolutely right. It evokes that feeling, that Cthulhu-esque feeling, that kind of feeling of dread and horror set in the 1920s or whatever. Evokes it very, very well. I think my biggest surprise for me is I didn't want to get it to the table as often as I thought I wanted to get it to the table. And therefore, there was something inherent. I don't know what it was. I can't quite put the finger on why it didn't work for me. It's a bit like Arnak, if you like. All the mechanisms are there for me. All the mechanisms are there. It's a really well and beautifully designed game. It just didn't have that kind of that spark, that lightning in a bottle for me that did for other people. And I think, by the time I'd sold it, I've not played it in over 12 months. And I knew I probably wasn't going to go back into it. So, but again, it's one of those games. I understand why people love it. And I think it does what it does. Considering the age of it, does what it does very, very well.
Always said the only thing I don't like is the horrible bases and miniatures. I mean, I actually do the Z Garcia thing here, where I actually just put the minis in a bag and I've never taken them out again. I use the tiles, don't use the bases. If a monster comes out, I put the tile on the board and that's it. And it's so much quicker that way to try to identify the minis, and they just look so much better than these god awful bases. So I certainly do feel it needs a component thing. Although somebody said, I mean, Tommy, are you serious? You played this with only one character? That's got to be unwinnable, surely, because that's why
challenge.
Well, yeah, because I played this with 3 or 4 investigators, because you physically need to cover that ground. One investigator can't cover enough ground before the game decides you've lost. So I don't know how on earth you're doing with that, but I mean, fair play if you are. Perhaps you've house ruled something, but yeah, I mean, one investigator, that just wouldn't work for me. But this one, like I say, unlike a lot of other games, I mean, I wouldn't try and do 4-handed Arkham Horror LCG, but I can certainly 4-hand this one without too much trouble. But yeah, put the music on, the ambient stuff. I love how the combat, when it says, right, what type of weapon are you using? This. And then it gives you kind of like a little narrative as to what you're doing. Like, you slide under the cultist's legs, uppercut him, or swing your sword out. It's not just simply hit 2 damage.
Right.
Is it?
There he goes. Yeah. In general.
Right. Okay. Oh, I see. Right. I was going to say, yeah. That freaked me out. I thought, no way are you playing this with only one character. I thought, that's a lie. So, all right. But something we're not going to lie about is our number 5s.
Okay, so number 5 for me was my favourite solo release of 2020. I know you like this game fine enough, Luke, but for whatever reason, first of all, production quality, absolutely out of this world. It looks great on the table. The rule set is relatively straightforward to learn, and the solo mode by Luke Laurie, it wasn't designed as a solo game, but he implemented it, and it works really, really well. There's nothing cumbersome about the solo mode, and this is Dwellings of Eldervale. I think it's an absolutely stunning, let's call it 3X game rather than 4X, I suppose. Expand.
Oh, God, yeah, this is not a 4X game in any way, no. I mean, I don't think I'd really call it anything X game. It doesn't feel like it's that type of game. It's more of just, it's bog standard area control with extra bits thrown in, so I wouldn't call it 3 or 4X,
Yeah, it's area control, tableau building, the great implementation of the monsters that you can pick and choose to go in there as well, and you're playing against this really silky smooth AI, the ghosts, I think it's called the AI, where you're turning cards over, and they do their actions based on where they are on the board and what these cards are. And everything just clicks into place absolutely fantastically well. It's such a joyous experience to play this game. Again, there's no real narrative here. You kind of understand what you're trying to do, but it doesn't matter. It's bright, it's colourful, it provides a really good and again adaptable challenge because you've got the slight asymmetry on all the various factions that you can choose. Wonderful game trays in the box as well. Yes, it's a big bloody box. Those game trays are an absolute godsend that come with it. I can win this game considerably, or I can lose this game considerably, and it flits between sometimes, depending on a lot of different factors, and certainly a lot of the factions I'm choosing to play as well. I think it's just a true work of art, and I'm looking forward to Luke's next game. I think it's Andromeda something or other, a space-based game.
Like that,
similar to, well, not similar, but it has some of the same mechanisms of Dwellings of Eldervale. Stunning game, bit expensive, but absolutely fantastic to play.
He's definitely going to be recycling a bit. I mean, if you've played Cryo, which is also one of his designs, it's like some of the stuff in that is airlifted straight out of this. Like, it's almost cloning some of the mechanics in there. But now he's definitely one to look out for. I haven't really looked into Andromeda much, but I mean, Whistle Mountain is partially co-designed by him, which I love. This one I really like as well. I've still got it. It doesn't make my list. I did like the solo mode in it. I thought it was a really good implementation. The game didn't necessarily get much shorter than a typical multiplayer game with it, but say it worked just fine. I don't know what it is that hasn't made me bring this one out. Maybe it is just the amount of stuff in it, like maybe, setup wise. It's not, this, even though you've got the game trays, you still have a fair bit to put together. I think with this one, I kind of like the interaction of the players a bit more with dwellings. Like, okay, I really need to know, are you going to come and hit me? Are you going to nick my spot? Are you going to take this cup monster off me? And that is like, there's a little bit more emphasis on there. I think maybe with dwellings, it's the thematic disconnect I get from it, because you've got all these different magic schools that you have, Earth, whichever, and the different cards, but I never necessarily feel like I'm some great mage doing all this stuff. I feel like I'm playing, again, the Euro game with the theme sort of stuck on it. And
I think that's it. You're right. Yeah, but I do like the mechanism in this where when you're taking your players, your pieces back off the board, you then activate your tableau with those pieces that come in back off the board as well.
Yeah,
so it doesn't feel like a wasted move. It's quite strategic as to when you do that. Sometimes you'll do that without all your pieces that you can put on the board being on the board just to get a strategic advantage. But yeah, I do think there is a thematic disconnect here, and again, it's one where you potentially fill the blanks in a little bit yourself. And for me, I got the although I got the deluxe edition, then Peter Vaughan and Luke were kind enough to send me the monsters with the noise bases on them as well.
Yeah, I've got that complete gimmick.
Gimmick makes no difference whatsoever, and I will never play the game without it. I absolutely adore moving them across the board and hearing them go, "Rah!" It's just great fun.
It's like, there you go, noise. I mean, I do like those monsters. I wish they maybe played a bigger part, but yeah, I do, or could take control of them easier. But yeah, they are good fun to have on the board. The different factions all good. There's a lot of quality stuff in it. I still really like the game. I think it's just for some reason I haven't brought it out as much as I did when I first got it. Maybe because it is still quite a bit to teach and it will be a lengthy game. But now this is still solid, and I gotta give praise that the solo mode is done well. It's a good mode.
That picture back there, that was Peter and Luke on that picture previous. So you got Luke on the right and Peter Vaughan on the left there.
Doing all this. Luke's a good friendly bloke. Okay, and right, my 5. Right, okay. We're definitely going back to the thematic stuff now, but we're going to go dark and gritty, nice and gritty. I want like horrific choices. I want, I'm trying to think of other words to say. I want it to be disturbing. I want it to be dark. I want it to be horribleness, because they make for good, fun stories. Yeah, you can't have a campaign that is much more, well, maybe until Frostpunk gets released later this year, you can't get anything much more gritty than this War of Mine. And a lot of the reason this is actually higher up than it probably normally would be, like it might not have made the top 10, is as much as I like playing this War of Mine normally with the base game, the scenarios from the first expansion I think are a must. They are great, but there is a campaign you can get called Days of the Siege, which I might sort of go on to mainly, which is where this game shines. It's a campaign expansion, 3 acts, so it's not like, I got to commit for 12 weeks in order to get this to the table, but this particular campaign gives you a proper story of a group trying to survive in a in the wartime setting, but the people you interact with, the stuff you can do, the events that happen make this an evolving storyline that will feel different every single time you play it. There are story aspects where I know that you can collect like 1 out of about 15 different story items for a point, and last time I played I think I found 2. So you don't necessarily fail, but it just dictated where I went from there. But you have the map here of the city, so you can go to the different cities. They've got different cards, go excavate others. But then the events that come out list the different cities. Like it might say you've heard rumblings of an orphanage that's got trouble in one area, or like the bridge, they're looking for workers. Have we got time to go work for them? We could get some food. But then I decide, now, you know what, I ain't got time to go help fix the bridge. Well, now it's broke. So now I can't cross the river very easily. Let's go help the orphans out. And then that's like a side quest in itself while you're trying to do the main story. And each act, 2 different acts that you can do. You do act 1, but then based on whether you do a certain major decision will dictate whether you're going to do act 2A or 2B. Yeah. And they're fundamentally different. I mean, I could go through this, do it the complete opposite the way I did the first time, and just go with it. But I just love the theme of this. Every choice I'm making just feels horrible in some respects, because that you're just like, I'm so evil Homer about this. But it's
and I think that's it about this War of Mine. It's not a game about making good choices. It's about a game about making the sacrifices you can live with. And I think, I've got the base game. I've not got any of the expansions, and I like it fine enough. I think it does this. And another one of games on my list, probably the areas where Awakened Realms excel for me. These kind of self-contained experiences. When you negate things like Tainted Grail and Etherfields because there's too much in there. The kind of sandboxy thing just feels too bloated. This and some other Awakening Realms games, and certainly one that I'll be mentioning in my list in a wee while, where they absolutely excel. You get this really kind of concentrated experience. But I think as much as I've enjoyed my time with this War of Mine, I find it emotionally draining at the same time. And I think that's why I don't get it to the table, because I become so invested in each of these characters that when bad things invariably happen to them, I feel drained after a game of this War of Mine. So, which means, the theme is linking really well to the gameplay, and it's working really, really, really well. Need to play it more, though.
Just so much. I mean, the thing is, I only want to play a scenario or Days of the Siege now, because the base game I actually think is harder. Like the base set there, because you've got to go for longer. You've got to survive longer, whereas the scenarios tend to be a bit shorter in time length, but then throw in the other factors. So I almost feel like just having a shorter length makes it slightly easier, but it doesn't make them easy. I mean, they're still hard. But throwing in a scenario where you have to control 2 lovers and you've got to survive with just those 2 characters. There are some really good stories that you can tell, but the Days of the Siege has got some of the best writing I've seen for a wartime story in there, and every dark thing I've done, and it can lead to great story ending consequences. I mentioned it's not a massive spoiler, but I mean, well, maybe it is, whatever. But it's the orphanage that I had. This is just one event card out of a deck of like 30 odd events that could come out, and you decide whether you're going to care about them or not. I thought, let's go find it. Here's the orphanage. Do a side quest for them. Yeah, cool. Here's some food, even though I'm going to starve probably next day or something. And then that led to about another 3 or 4 side quests of like dealing with children getting drafted to war and stuff like that, like really horrific stuff. Until eventually it's like, right, okay, you're not safe here. This is getting shelled. We need to find you another place. Not going to say much more detail, but I found a place. Didn't have much time to really check it. I kind of just had to sort of go with the first one I found. And then the epilogue at the very end basically just... what happened to that orphanage that I did? Oh, and then it's like a smouldering cinder by the end. It's like, for crying out loud, that's like... how much time I spent on trying to save him, and at the end of the day, it meant nothing. But it's like, perfect. I made a mistake. It had consequences. It didn't Frozen 2 retcon it. It's like, it works on there.
Laughing at this comment that Man vs. Meeple have just put in there. The kind of the broken mark with a cup of coffee, a good way to start the day. Yeah, I feel like a broken mark many, many times at my age, and certainly post Christmas as well. So, thank you very much for that, MBM.
I certainly feel broken. I'm not sure I feel like a mark, but whatever that's supposed to be. I like Pace's comment that there's like some YouTube documentaries on the siege, because that's what this is based on. I haven't read up too much on it, but you can tell there's history in it. The interesting thing is, like Pace says, how important is theme to your enjoyment of the game? If you followed my channel for like any length of time, it's like, I mean, yeah, there are some dry games that I have where I don't. I mean, Pulsar 2849 is a game I love, and that's got no theme in it whatsoever. So there are exceptions to the rule, but a semi-law that I do have with the games I have is that like the solid mechanics will make me enjoy a game, but a solid theme will make me come back for the second play. Yeah. And that's theme does bring me back to games more. Like this Awakened Realms we've mentioned, I've got some of the best themes in their games. They don't always work mechanically. you
And
know,
I think theme is important depending on the game itself. I love a thematically strong game, but like we talked about with Mage Knight and with Youthia and a couple of others and Zia, the theme is there. It's overarching, if you like, but you fill in the story yourself. I think I had a big problem last year with a game like Red Rising, which was an IP-based game where there was no theme there, and I wasn't investing. I didn't know anything about the IP, and therefore, because it lacked theme on an IP, that's where the disconnect came from me. Now, Jason Perez felt very, very differently. He thought it didn't matter that much, but for me, it absolutely did matter. So I think it depends on the game. Yeah.
How about that? Yeah, if they try an IP and then it's just they're tacked on, that doesn't work for me. I mean, Stonemaier did that recently with, was it Red Rising?
It was Red Rising, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I've got no knowledge of the books at all. The game itself is just Fantasy Realms, but let's just make it 3 times longer. So what's the point? But yeah, I could just imagine that if you were a fan of the series, the game's going to do nothing for you.
Yeah.
You know, and Lord of the Rings and all my favorite sort of IPs get the same treatment. You know, it's like, all right, here's my Lord of the Rings campaign game. Fantastic. Oh, by the way, here's also Lord of the Rings love letter. It's like, come on. It's like, I don't need it tacked on to everything. Alrighty, 4s. Let's move it on.
So number 4 is the last Euro for me, and so far the physical copies from this company that I've got, it's my favorite one, the one that I played the most, and I still haven't played all the various modules for it yet. It's almost the peak of a Euro game for me, and this is Anachrony Infinity Box by Mindclash Games, by David Turksey and all the other designers, with all the various modules thrown in there. I stayed away from the base game and the various expansions, and I got the Infinity Box kind of at back end of 2020, and I just absolutely adore it. I think it is just a masterpiece of linking mechanisms together to create a coherent experience. Now, for the solo player with the Infinity Box, you get Chronosis 2. Which is what it's called, Chronosabot, the second iteration of the solo bot. I think it tells you to kind of play with the first Chronobot first and then play with Chronosis in subsequent games, which I did. I played the solo bot first and then Chronosis, the next iteration. And it's a really intelligent, competitive AI that you're playing with, links massively well into almost every single module into the Anachrony Infinity Box. I think there's just the one about whatever it's the Senate or whatever it is that you can't link it in there to. Adore everything about it. Yes, it's a big game. Yes, it's a huge box. Yes, it takes some time to set up.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, you're going to have to reread rule sets if you're playing with various with various modules, and you can interlink all these modules. But for a work of art where almost 100% of it links seamlessly together to provide a proper, challenging, mechanically kind of wonderful game, Anachrony Infinity Box is just really at the top of the tree for me.
Well, definitely that. I mean, Ricky, you want me to teach you this game? We will do it. It's like Ricky runs a club nearby, so it's like definitely. You want me to teach you this game? Just shout. But I do love Anachrony like crazy. This is something that Mindclash games do well. They give you a complex Euro, but give you a solid theme that works. Doesn't necessarily have to relate to real life in a sense. I mean, this is time travel with, factions and robot mechs and stuff, but it still feels like a strong theme. The world setting is strong, and is complicated. There is a lot going on, but I get such a kick out of playing it with like different leaders and try it. Now, I do think it's too bloated for its own good now. I would play it on its base set fine. Throw in Fractures of Time if people know what they're doing, because it is a good expansion. I could not care less about any of the other stretch goal expansions. It's just too much extra. The game's already got enough in it. I don't need to throw in the imperfections from, Kickstarter Stretch Goal 2 or something, or the Doomsday module and that. It's like, come on. I mean, even this timeline here, this is the B side of the timeline, which is like twice as complicated as like the basic side, and it's like you don't need to. It's just a little bit much.
Yeah, you don't need to, and I agree that you don't need to. But I'm enjoying experimenting with various things on this. I think once you've played the basic, and certainly as a solo player, because you're playing against an AI, it's not quite the same as playing against other people who play at different strengths and different levels. So for a solo gamer to have the ability to throw the various expansions and the modules in, really just shake things up. And I feel like I'm learning a new game almost. It's not totally, you'll still know 80 to 90% of the game that you're playing, but it's just got enough tweaks when I throw these modules in. It gets that time travel mechanism is a really important part for it as well.
God, I love that mechanic.
Yeah, that is just so good in this, where you take stuff from the future, bring it back, but you have to repay it again at the point in the future. It's just fantastic.
All debt in the world is time travel. It's like you go to your bank, you're taking money from yourself in the future. That's how it works.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, I do love it, but I got to admit, as much as I like the system of the Chronosis or whatever it is now and that, this is one of those examples where it's like, this game is already complicated as it is. The bot is just another complication, and I just don't tend to bring this one out for solo anymore. Okay. I know the system's good. Yeah. It's just the amount of effort and investment to get this out solo. It's like, no, I want to play this with 2 or 3 other people and do the full multiplayer experience. Because last time I tried to play the Chronosis bot phone, it took me hours and hours to get through it, and it's just like, wow, this is quite a bit. Although, I mean, was it Man vs. Meeple thing? I'm sorry, but wrong. Favorite medium weight euro. I don't know what planet you are on to think that this is medium weight. If this is medium weight, then what on earth is heavy? Have you seen this game? I was like, come on.
No, I'm saying that, and I kind of agree with MVM on this in the fact that
you do not.
No, I do, and we mentioned this when we did the top 200. Is the fact that once you know to play the game, it clicks very, very nice and easy. Yeah,
you can say that about every game. Like once you know it clicks.
A certain degree.
Squad Commander or whatever, like one of the heaviest games on BGG is. I'm pretty certain if it clicks for you, you'll be able to play it fine. Yeah. But this is not a game I would pull out for any midweight. Something like Viscounts of the West Kingdom and that is midweight. This is not.
I'd say, all right, mid to heavy with maybe something like Tricerium solo with all the expansions thrown in. I think that's where you get to heavyweight Euros there.
Tricerion's heavy by itself. I mean, there is no midweight Mind Clash game. It's not, excluding that spin-off card game they did. But yeah, everything by Mind Clash is a heavy game. It's like they're not midway.
Yeah, and we love them the more for it as well. I mean, I know this year both you and I played Voidfall at various points, which is obviously and that's got loads of decision space. I played the episode 2 of Perseverance at Essen last year, and I can't wait for that to arrive this year, because it is just absolutely just a fantastic experience. And I think that's the thing about, if I had 10 Mind Clash games, I would do a top 10 of Mind Clash games. I think I've got them all, but I don't think there's quite 10 there of the kind of Turksy Mind Clash games. But I just love the fact that when I'm getting Anachrony out or getting some of the others out, Cerebria, etc., then I know I'm in for a really good, crunchy time, and MVM just said there, obviously, it gets heavier when you add the expansions. I agree with that. I do still think
but that doesn't make it medium to begin with.
I don't know. I think it's everybody's setting there and how you tackle these things. But I think it's a work of art, Anachrony.
Because Mark here says it's medium weight because the mechanics themselves are not complicated. The rule book's pretty, the mechanics in there are not straightforward. You're trying to explain the time travel mechanic to somebody who's never seen this sort of thing in the game before, as well as all the buildings, as well as the board and the mechs and your humans and waking them up, and the the collision, whatever it's called. It's it's not medium weight. I've ranted about this so much on a previous podcast episode. I remember where I was like, we gamers that are into this sort of thing are too biased as to what is medium and heavyweight. We think that Twilight Imperium 4 is light because we've played these sort of games all over. But when you try and think of the person coming into the hobby and base that on your light, medium weight, it's like, I wouldn't put this near anybody who I didn't trust to handle a heavyweight game. It's just not going to happen. Some people have mentioned Tawantin Suyu. I don't know if the AI is similar to that, but I mean, I hated the solo in that game.
I've not played. I played obviously Teotihuacan and Tekenu, but I've not played Tawantin Suyu.
Yeah, that one, priority orders are just all over the shop. I mean, the game is just stupidly complicated, but everyone's sort of going Mind Clash is great, Cerebria great, but some people's Lacerda or heavyweight. Well, this is
Not,
comparable to a Lacerda. I mean, it's.
I'd say the only proper heavyweight Lacerda is probably on Mars because of everything that's happening on there. The rest are kind of mid to heavyweight, I would say.
There's no. I also don't do that. What do you call it? The medium heavy. It's like people who go, oh, it's like the Dice Tower doing like 8.5s and that. It's like, look, there is no point doing a half rating because that just means your vote is out of 20. It just, I just don't get that, and I never trust the BGG weight ranking.
I very rarely look at BGG weight rankings at all. No.
Yeah, because not only is that rubbish anyway. I mean, what makes like Jaipur is suddenly like 1.75, and it's like Jaipur is one of the easiest games ever or something. But then it only takes one person to put a weighting on there for it to be official. So, like, you cannot trust that system. Anyways, better get on to math 4, otherwise we'll go around this region. We could do a whole podcast on that discussion, but and I'm pretty certain I have at some point before. All right. Module 4. Oh, where are we actually? Good, yes. One of my favourite games ever, although people are going to be slightly shocked that this is not higher than certain other games on my list. Again, I was trying to consider, right, do I only want to play this solo, or do I get just a similar kick out of playing it multiplayer? And this one, when I thought about it, it's like, well, hang on a minute. A new edition of this is coming out by the end of this month, which I will get, despite owning all of this already. But I'm going to buy that in order to teach it to other players. And I do like playing this multiplayer as well as solo. So I sort of brought it slightly further down the list going that, yeah, I do love this game as a solo game, but it's not like the multiplayer sucks or is way too long for my liking or anything. But I'd be probably like shouted out of this seat if I didn't put one of my favorite games on this list because I do love this for a game so much. It is just, this is my superhero game of choice. You know, you want me to just be a Marvel or a DC style hero, I'm going for this game. And granted, I don't even know why I'm looking through the images on this one because it's like a nightmare trying to find it. But it's that card game feeling of I'm my own character. I'm going to be this bunker dude. Has his cards. This is his style of play, and it works an absolute treat. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Here we go. Maybe it's worth bringing up this edition now because this is the one you're going to be able to get soon. The definitive edition, which I think we're getting by the end of this month. It's going to be like a bigger starter set. They've revised the artwork. They've changed the graphic design to make it easier to learn, which, to be fair, I'm not going to deny it. It could have used a little bit of improvements in there. But when this comes out, I'm buying it and I'm teaching people at my club there. It's like, and as much as I like this game where I can just play free-handed, I'll take free decks. It's a lot to juggle around if you are controlling that many decks by yourself. So I don't tend to bring this one out solo as much unless I'm playing the app. The app is like really good. Okay. But I will happily get this game and find 3 people at my club and say, you want to play a co-op about being a superhero? Great. Who do you like in vain? You're a Batman fan? Right, well, there's Rafe. Who do you love? Oh, you like Spider-Man? This one's pretty similar. You watched Punisher last week. Right, here's this lady with loads of guns. I can find a character for you regardless of what your favorite hero is at this point. Maybe not out of the starter set, but certainly out of the collection I've got, I can find you pretty much anything you want or didn't know existed. So,
I have never played it. Never played it at all. It looks overwhelming for me, I think, with all the expansions, etc., that are out. And I know some people say it's a bit of a maths exercise to play as well.
It does have some bookkeeping elements to it, but I find that as long as the host of the game knows what they're doing on that, it's fine. Okay. And I'm the one who juggles that around. But the thing with this, I mean, Mark and Nat has said, like, this or Marvel Champions. If we're talking which game I enjoy the most overall, we're probably talking this one in that. I mean, Marvel Champions is still fantastic, but this one, I think I like it because they're different. It's not an IP specific. These feel like they're parodying ones, but this is its own universe. I mean, they've got a comic strip based on this, and if you read the backstories on some of them, it's like, oh, actually, this could be a really good cartoon series if they tried it. But the thing that's interesting with this, and the fact you haven't played it, is people banged on at me to play Street Masters for so long because of my love for this game. They said if I like this, there's no reason I wouldn't like Street Masters, which they were right, to be fair. But it's that similar feeling. My character, big boss, go beat 'em up, except this is a card game as opposed to a skirmish map game.
I think, it may be something that at some point I'll pick up and give a go. But I've got the Hour of Need from the Saddlers coming, again from the Streetmaster guys coming, which is their version of a superhero game, if you like, which I'm looking forward to getting that because I do like the MDS system. This potentially, I don't know, maybe it's just never really been on my radar. I've read about it, and again, maybe it's just because there's so much stuff available for it. I just thought it's a road I don't even want to go down at this stage. But you say this is the definitive edition that's been released, and maybe that's the one to get. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've got the big black box that I believe was it John. Yeah, John mentioned here the big black box with everything in its sleeve. I've got the whole lot. That's my solo collection version, or anybody who's a massive fan. This definitive edition. I forget how many heroes are in it, like 12 or something, and like a few villains and that. But yeah, you grab that box, you got everything you need. So if you don't get this yourself and learn it, then I will teach you it with this box the next time I see you at a convention, because it's definitely the best way to get into it. There's a bit of mathiness to it, but as long as one person knows what they're doing with it, is comfortable with it, then it's not too bad. And anyway, this new version should make life a bit simpler in that regard. All right, moving on, top threes.
So we've talked about thematic games, and this is almost the most thematic game that you can get. This, and it's been in my top 3 since I got it and started gaming. The latest standalone expansion has just been delivered just before New Year for me, which I played a couple of times. So I'm linking that in with this. I'm talking all things Nemesis by Adam Kopinski and published by Awaken Realms. Oh my God, such almost the perfect solo game. I don't play one character. I like to play co-op and play at least 2 characters. And I never have anything than a cinematic, thematic, frightening, tension-filled, my bum going 50 pence, 5 pence, 50 pence, 5 pence as the tension starts to rack up, basically.
Wouldn't necessarily go that far, but yeah.
You got it's the best Alien game there is that is not Alien. Well, the best Alien game there is basically based on Alien that is obviously not Alien. When you throw in things like Void Seeders or Carnivores, and I still prefer the base Intruders to those, but they change the dynamic on the game and change how you play. Lockdown, which arrived, say, just kind of New Year's Eve for me, which I played twice now, is arguably the better game in terms of mechanics and the mechanisms that are in there. You're controlling things like darkness, etc. But Nemesis, I'm including it all here, Nemesis will always shine for me. For the moment I got it from UK Games Expo in 2019, it's one of my most played games ever. I will never not want to play Nemesis.
Can I attack the darkness?
Can you attack the darkness?
I don't think you will have seen that. Some people might get that reference, but no. There's a D&D parody video where they're having it, and one of them's like claiming I'm going to attack the darkness with a magic missile. It's hilarious. I've got the stuff, and I've got Lockdown. I haven't tried Lockdown yet, and I've played a couple of solo games of Nemesis, because it's a game I want to love because I love the Alien IP. Now, I've been lukewarm on the multiplayer for a while because as much as it is, I mean, Alien Legendary I love, but it's a deck builder. It's a good thematic Alien game, but you want the perfect substitute for Alien. Nemesis is the one hands down thematically. The mechanics I like, but man, does Nemesis take a long time to play multiplayer, like hours and hours to play, which is a bit of a put-off. And the solo game I played wasn't exactly much shorter, but it was also a different style of game, like the semi-co-op versus hiding by yourself. I mean, I think the Intruder came out once in the solo game I played, because you are being a lot more quieter. You're not generating noise every left, right, and center. But I enjoyed it, but it's like I want to get that spark. Yeah. And I'm wondering if Lockdown will be it. But as I read the Lockdown rulebook, 90% of it feels exactly the same as Nemesis. So I'm trying to find like the tweaks to the system that they've done to say, right, no, this is what's improved in Lockdown. This is why you're going to love this one better than Nemesis. With me, I think maybe it's a case that I want the app, because there's an app for it at the moment, and it's pretty naff, like the current one. Now, they are meant to be, releasing a new version of it. It was part of their Kickstarter stretch goals, but they haven't finished it yet. And that's what I'm sort of thinking. It's like, is that going to be the bit that I need? That's just that nice immersive app to go with it. I mean, yeah, you can put music onto this and have a good laugh. But as I say, I'm going to keep playing it more, and I'm going to play the lockdown stuff anyway to try and find out whether this is a solo game for me or I'm just going to keep it as an event multiplayer game. So I'll probably still keep it because it's not like I don't enjoy it, even though I think it's too long. It still is one of the best representations of an alien theme. And there are some great stories that I've had with this.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things.
I totally understand why, as a solo game, as a true solo game, or if you're playing solo co-op with it, why it doesn't work for some people, because an inherent part of the multiplayer game is the ability to have the traitor mechanism in there as well, which can change the way that you play. I know that can be really brutal for people as well. Some people don't enjoy that. That's obviously not in the solo or the co-op version, but I still don't care. This tells the story for me. And as I say, whether I last 3 rounds, which has happened, or whether I last an entire game and end up losing, even though I've escaped the ship, because I've got an infected contamination card, I don't care. The ship can blow up, it can malfunction. Intruders may or may not come out. I think when I was playing Nemesis Lockdown for the first time the other day, on round 2, one of my characters spawned the Queen. I mean, talk about round
but that you just write the game off at that point, yeah.
No, I survived a lot longer, managed to avoid and whatnot. And you've got to remember, it's not a combat game. It really isn't a combat game. It's an evolving puzzle where you're trying to complete objectives, and combat is sometimes the last thing you want to be doing in it. I absolutely adore it.
Maybe I wanted a bit more combat in it. I don't know, because the puzzle aspect is mainly just a case of, right, I need to do this objective. Go find the room that's relevant and then do your stuff in it. Half the problem is just trying to find the wretched room, because for some reason you don't know what's on the ship, despite the fact you've been on it for ages. But yeah, it fits, yeah. But like I say, it's more of a sneaking game when you play it solo. And I play it two-handed co-op as well. I just can't imagine how you would win it true solo with one character. I just think you just wouldn't cover enough ground. One bad thing happens to you, you'd have trouble, I think.
Yeah, and I like the interplay with 2 characters as well. If you can move to a room that a character's in, there's no noise roll, etc. So I do. And MVM just said here, Lockdown is so much better. I agree mechanically. I think it is. I've only played twice, I say, Lockdown. Now, I'm no denying it is the better game, but it's just one of those things where Nemesis will always hold that really special place in my heart for me.
Well, I'll definitely try out Lockdown soon anyway. Probably tomorrow if I get a chance, and see how it differs, because I do want to see if it's an improvement over a rule on it. What do you think of Johnson? Because I've got these as well, and Lockdown came with a 3rd book in this. Are these untold stories worth me doing to get a bit more enjoyment out of it? I must admit,
I've not done them. I think one of them you can't do solo. I think it's Untold Stories 2 that you can't do solo. So they had a campaign element into there. And so I want to work through them. But what I also want to do is devote a day where I start off with Nemesis, and then I play the epilogue from the Aftermath, and then I go straight into Lockdown, and I just want to do a day doing the full Nemesis experience, basically.
I read that epilogue thing. I thought, come blimey, this is like 3 hours plus that I'm playing Nemesis for. I'm not playing an epilogue on top of that. That's not happening. That's an example of like too much bloat. But people are saying Lockdown is so much better. Like I say, it's interesting because I read the rulebook and I'm like, that's the same as Nemesis. That's the same as Nemesis. Well, that's marginally different. It's like, what's different?
It's about 80% the same, but there, a couple of key things is, first of all, this darkness mechanism. The intruders, or whoever you're playing with, react differently as to whether you're in the lighted part of the air, a powered part of the Mars base, or a dark part of the Mars base. Obviously, in darkness, things happen differently. Now, you have to go to a generator room, to a temporary generator room, to kind of boost the power to make sure you're getting light as much as possible. But it becomes another mechanism that you've got to add into the mix. So a little bit like the menhirs in Tainted Grail, but nowhere near as cumbersome.
Right.
And then you've also got the thing like the Mars rover, which is one of the conditions of how you can win the game. Get into a state where that can done. You've got the elevators, which allow you to move up and down. There's just these little tweaks, these extra mechanisms, which don't detract but actually add to the experience. So you'll know 80% of the game. The other 20% is really kind of polishing the diamond.
Which is cool. That's kind of my idea. I do like these new intruders, though. I do like the look of them. And I mean, that's one thing. It's like half of these, I just want a computer game based on this, or like something like that, because I just love the artwork for some of these things. I mean, I could just imagine myself playing like Alien Isolation with the Nemesis theme and just going nuts. Can you use the new mechanics in the original game? Not technically, but you can use the original and Aftermath Adians in Lockdown. There are compatibility rules for some of the bits in there. But this is one, like, even if I don't love it to bits by the time I'm done with it, I would never say it was bad. It was like, it may be just like, I'm trying to find that spark, and whether it lights or not, I don't know. But God blimey, yeah, this is definitely a solid one. Alrighty, 3. So notice I'm getting on. Right, we have talked about this already. In fact, this is the first crossover. I think this is the first crossover we got. Well, this is not to say that this game is better than my number 4. But when I considered, will I play this game multiplayer, there's a better chance I won't play this multiplayer. I loved it 2-player. I don't know if I would play it 3 or 4. I feel like it would just be a bit too long. But you're right. Yeah, I am really loving Street Masters. It's like, this one is really working for me. It's ages I've wanted to try this game. Finally, I have. And yet, this brings back so much nostalgic theme for me. It's unreal. With so much content now. I didn't even get on the latest Game Found campaign. This is just everything up to Aftershock, and this will probably last me years. Like, it's not going to end anytime soon. But besides that great theme, something I'm really liking about it is that it's not a long setup. It looks like it should be, but no, you pretty much just, there's your environment deck, there's your villain deck, grab your hero, and you're 90% done. You've just got a couple of extra little tweaks on the setup, providing you're not doing like the story or the campaign ones. So, and that I kind of respect out of a solo game, being able to not have to take forever to do these things. But all these like characters that I get, oh yeah, that's like Ryu, that's Ken, there's Blanca, there's a few of them. Yeah, their backstories work. Each one that I've played does feel different. Yeah, that was the girl. Those 2 characters were the ones we played. Yeah. So I forget who it was who taught me it, but yeah, he was playing Ryu, basically. I mean, it's in the title. I mean, come on. It's in there. And then I played this Megan girl, and I'm just like going up to the boss, kicking him in the face repeatedly. While stuffing myself with my turkey.
I think, as we mentioned earlier, the kind of beauty in Street Masters is his ability to match, to mix and match the hero, the bad guys that you're fighting against, and the scenario that you're on. And whatever you choose, you will have a wildly different time doing that as well. And the single choice of a hero and a bad guy in a different scenario can make a massive difference. Same with changing heroes. They play just differently enough to mean that you kind of have to master what they're doing. And I've certainly played games where I've chosen the wrong heroes for the scenario, or the wrong heroes for the bad guys that I'm fighting, and I don't care.
It's a challenge.
I've had my ass kicked so quickly in this game, it's untrue. And other games, I've strived and got to victory. I just love everything. It's just a great skirmish game, as you said.
This was the guy that I compared to Blanca earlier. Although now that I look at him more, actually, I would compare him more to Broly. He's more Broly, to be honest. Oh yeah, you wouldn't know Dragon Ball Z, but yeah, any Dragon Ball Z fan will be thinking, yeah, that's actually closer to Broly than it is there with the green hair and the muscular form. I mean, that you expect him to be screaming out Kakarot any time now. But yeah, even just choosing your stage. I've got so many stages, and as much as Pace has asked, like, do you need expansions to enjoy this? No. The base set has a decent amount of content in it. All the expansions, all the stretch goals, mainly just add more content. I think the only new thing they brought in might have been the story and mission things, where you can kind of like do a mini campaign. But honestly, the rules to that look a little bit cumbersome, and I'm honestly just don't care if I do that. You literally just pick a scenario and do a skirmish game, and you'll get all the enjoyment out of it. So it's just a case of how much more content do you want, and there is a sickening amount of it.
You don't need them, you will want them. That's the difference, basically, yeah.
It is like that. I like that Mark said, like, this is why Luke went to GridCon. It's like, there are other reasons, but granted, when somebody said, I'm finally going to get taught this game, it's like, oh, thank God. And yes, there is an app.
Yep.
I do have it. It is way overpriced for an app. It's like nearly a tenner. It's like, come on. But it is a good, solid app.
Yeah.
You can play the game nicely on there. So if you're willing to puck up with the investment, you will get a decent game of Street Masters, base set only, unfortunately, but still, out of it. So it works. But I think I'll leave it at that, because, as I say, we've already talked about it. But yeah, you're right. This one has been working for me. And it's not to say I prefer it to Sentinels. I think I still prefer Sentinels overall. But I will play Sentinels multiplayer. I don't think I will play this above 2 players. So that it kind of just elevated it slightly on there. Or maybe it's just new game hype, who knows? We'll see. Moving on.
Okay, number 2 is a game I know is not going to make your list. So we got no we got no chance of a crossover here on this. People who
No.
watch me, followed my channel, know that I adore the company that produced this. I adore this game. I've got everything for it. I've got all the new stuff coming from the Kickstarters. There behind me is the trove chest for it, and of course, I'm talking Too Many Bones, the dice building RPG. Luke will take issue with the words with the letters RPG on that, and that's absolutely fine. But this is just one of the most tactile games that you're going to play. I just have a tremendous amount of fun. You've got complete asymmetry in all the gear locks, all the various characters you can find, so that you can fight with, or you can take on your adventures throughout Daylore. You've got all the various expansions, 40 Days in Daylore, the Splice and Dice, the other ones that I can't remember because they're all in the box there. It's lots of dice, it's lots of rolling. You've got the battle mat, which Luke doesn't like because it's too small.
It's 4x4.
You've got the tactical stuff that's going on here as well, strategic stuff. It fills in just enough of the story for you to then kind of create and adapt your gearlocks as you play through. And the gearlocks do play absolutely very, very differently as well. And having the choice of gearlocks against the tyrants that you're going to fight against is key for you as well. And learning those gearlocks. Downsides for Too Many Bones is the rule book is not that great, and there are lots of rules in this, and each gearlock has its own set of rules. So you have to devote and invest a lot of time to learning the game. But it's a game for me, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And as I say, I've got absolutely everything so far. I've got the new stuff coming from Unbreakable, which kind of closes the loop then on this current iteration of Too Many Bones. It's a game for me personally, which doesn't put really a foot wrong.
It's definitely, I mean, you got to invest in this. You can't just play this casually. There's too much content for it. That rulebook, as you say, you said it's not the best. That's an understatement. It's like I nearly wanted to burn it. That rulebook was giving me a headache. Thankfully, the reference guides, as complicated as they are, at least get you into the game more. It's like, oh, thank goodness. No, I am not getting Burn Cycle. I'm assuming that's another Chip Theory thing, isn't it?
I've got the prototype down here, basically, from when they did the Kickstarter, strangely enough. Yeah, I'm getting Burn Cycle because I thought that was great as well.
I'd certainly wouldn't mind trying your Mind Over Matter, or whatever you called it a minute ago, the superhero one from Blacklist games.
Blacklist, Tower of Need. Yeah.
I feel like I've missed out on something else good there, but yeah, because I haven't paid them enough attention. But I have to look that one up. Yeah, I respect it enough. It's just this one. There's a lot of stuff I do like about it. I do like the production quality. I do like the different ways you can play each character, although I do find myself focusing on the same way for each character rather than mix and matching too much. But yeah, there were a few things that just rubbed me the wrong way that eventually I'm like, average review, and then I'm getting rid of it. And like, some people would disagree a lot. I mean, we've argued forever about this skirmish map, and where you said RPG, which I got to admit, I would not consider this an RPG in any way, shape, or form. But it's the strokes for folks argument, I think.
Yeah, I think this is it. It's not a Marmite game. It is a game that people absolutely love, or people don't like. You know, there's a few ambivalent people, but you know, there are people out there. It is expensive. You know, it's about 120 whatever it is for the base game. So certainly with everything I've got, I've invested quite a bit of money and time into this. So it is expensive, but the production quality is there. But if you enjoy the core experience, then you will find yourself going down this rabbit hole of buying more and more Too Many Bones stuff, and that's exactly what I've done.
Yeah,
it's never leaving my collection. It will probably always be certainly within my top 5, and maybe still always be near the top for me, because get it out, set it up. I know I'm in for a couple of hours of good story that I can fill the blanks into. And because I've got all the expansions, I've got enough cards to make those stories kind of unique every time. There's enough adaptability in there with things like the Undertow expansion, and as I mentioned, 40 Days in Daylore, and the Splice and Dice stuff where you create your own tyrants as well. There's enough, just so much in this game if you enjoy that core experience. If you don't enjoy that core experience, chances are that you're not really it's not going to be worth your while then forking out for all the expansions. They add to the core experience, but that core experience is always the same for you.
Yeah, you had to. If you don't like the core storyline in this skirmish part, then yeah, it does kind of fall apart. Because this is I mean, besides the game felt very punishing. Like some of these monsters, I swear, just wipe you out within there. But this is where I've mentioned I call it the rugby scrum skirmish map, which is essentially what happens, because this is a typical setup. You get 4, maybe more monsters. They all end up in a big line. your melee dude is here in the front, in whichever row, doesn't really matter where it goes. And here's your range person at the back in a corner, because that's the best place to put them. And then as soon as the thing shouts go, all of these melee people swarm this dude and surround him, and then there's no more movement for the rest of the game. It is a rugby scrum, which I couldn't get, where people were saying this strategic skirmish like map based part. And I thought, where's the strategy in that?
There is. It comes down to where you first place your gear locks, how you've got them built up, whether the baddies that you're fighting are kind of ranged or they move towards you, or they're more melee. Depends on what effects they have. So you have this big long list of effects that they all have. So the strategy comes in kind of almost understanding what you've got to be to try and cover most angles as the game progresses. And certainly it comes in understanding how the tyrant works at the end. You have to build your gear lock to defeat the tyrant at the end of it.
Yeah, which is the thing. I like to sort of like, no, I want to build it this way. I want to try this. It's like, nope, tyrant says you'll fail if you do that. It's like, oh, come on. I did it. But as I say, it's a strokes for folks. Too many things irked me with it, even though, like I say, this production I do love, which kind of made me feel sad when I realized, I don't particularly like this game, because this is nicely produced. It does look gorgeous with all the dice and those play mats, which I love, and all these different chips. And I'm like, oh, come on. I gave this one so much chance to like, no, I've got to find that spark again because I want to love this. it just wasn't to be. Well. Where was it? Matu. Right, now, I've cheated slightly, but I didn't want half my list to be nothing but these. Because it seemed like they would just dominate too much. One of them got mentioned earlier, but honestly, all three of these give me the same kind of itch. They're all part of the same genre. It's just a case of pick your theme and what day it is of the week, and I'll go play these games. So it technically includes Lord of the Rings, Arkham, and Marvel Champions, but basically it's the co-op LCGs. I just could not have like three of my numbers be those three LCGs, because honestly, I love them all. It's just a case that one day I feel like playing the Arkham and one day I feel like playing a Marvel Champions thing. So it's just a case of, oh well, pick one. But these ones, I like playing the multiplayer. I have played the multiplayer, but they tend to be the big group events. Like those big scenarios.
Yeah.
Rarely have I played Marvel Champions occasionally 2-player, but for the most part, this is a weird Arkham Horror card game. There should be more images than this, but I just get such a kick out of playing these solo. All right, I hate the deck building in advance. I tend to just find one on the internet and copy their deck and then try and pilot it, because I haven't got time to mess around trying to, and because I don't like visit these 24/7. It's not like I can say, oh yeah, I'm an expert at building this deck. It just doesn't kind of work out that way for me. But all of these I play solo and enjoy a ton. I can't find any good images because everybody just keeps putting components on there. But the Arkham Horror LCG, for example, second only to Mansions of Madness in terms of thematic like integration. The stories here are done well. I gotta give it more respect for the fact that with just a deck of cards, they can create all sorts of different scenarios, which I think takes some really good designs. And some of the imagery on these, I swear, gives me nightmares. Sometimes I played a campaign where you're fighting against like the spider elder god or so. Again, being an arachnophobe, that is the most difficult campaign I have played through, just in terms of wanting to play the scenarios. I swear the first one of that campaign in the hospital will still haunt my nightmares. It's that scary for anybody who's an arachnophobe. But even away from that, I still play the Lord of the Rings one. Marvel Champions, to say, do I prefer... I mean, this is number 2 and Sentinels was 4, but again, I'm going for like, do I play it more solo than anything else? Yeah, I prefer Sentinels, but Marvel Champions I still love. I'm a big Marvel fanboy, so give me any of the heroes that I like. I mean, all the content that there is now, I can say, yay, I can now play Doctor Strange and Captain America and go up against this villain. I do think it's power creeping a bit too much. Like, you come across like some of these Guardians Most Wanted and Thanos and that, and it's like, Jesus, how on earth are you supposed to beat these guys? Although I think Green Goblin still probably takes the cake as being one of the hardest ones to beat sometimes. But all of these co-op ones, I burnt out on all the competitive LCGs, too much tournament play, just too much power creep. These ones, yes, I've got all the content, but I could have literally just not bothered doing that. Just grab What you want, play at my own pace. Like, Brian says the Edge of the Earth is a brilliant one. I've not actually started it yet. It's on my to-do list. I've got it. I have a deck ready for it. I'm going to take Winifred out, the pilot girl. But yeah, I want to play through, the Edge of the Earth. I just haven't got round to it yet. So there's still plenty enough content in this. But yeah, pick a co-op LCG. I love them all.
So for me, I haven't played Lord of the Rings. I've got Arkham Horror LCG, and I think Marvel Champions. I bought most of the stuff right up to a certain point, and I think Marvel Champions absolutely nailed the fact that LCGs aren't for me. I've enjoyed them, fair enough. I have no desire to get Marvel Champions. I've got unplayed heroes and bad guys basically still in shrink down here. So maybe someday I will get them back out. But I understand why LCGs work for some people. Like you, I don't like that pre-deck construction thing. That doesn't interest me because I don't play it enough to understand them. I just want to play a game with. I know you can pull the decks off.
If it was,
etc. Yeah.
If it was not, if we didn't have the internet resource, these probably wouldn't be as popular because these ones I can just go onto whatever it is, Arkham DB, MarvelDB.com, find the people who play these religiously, find a deck for a character that I want to play, say, yeah, I've got those cards, I could do that, because at the end of the day, it just saves me a bit of time. Yes, it's all right to say, oh, I built this deck and it works great. Yeah, but I'm not caring about that satisfaction. I just want to see if I can beat the boss. And it's all well and saying you found a really good quality deck, but it's one thing to have a good deck. It's another thing to pilot it well. And any Magic the Gathering player will tell you this in a heartbeat. So, here's my number one player in the world, Magic player, gives me his deck. I guarantee you it won't do as well for me as it did for him. So it's one of those things. But yeah, pick one. I love them.
They're just not for me, LCGs, and I understand why people love them. Just not for me. So I don't think they'll ever feature on my on any of my top 10 lists.
Yeah, and as John says, it's a case of pick your poison. Lord of the Rings is very tough. It's the hardest of the three, I think, by far, but definitely requires a bit more effort in the deck construction. Marvel Champions requires the least effort in the deck construction because half the deck's already pre-built based on which hero you use, and it's mainly just go up and kill this hero, so there's less narrative. Whereas Arkham Horror LCG has the most narrative, is kind of in the middle for deck building. It's a little easier, but still you got to think a little bit. But it's definitely the most, shall we say, impressive of how the scenarios differ from round to round. I mean, even just like, all right, you're in a hotel this time. Now you've got the cards where you've got to take an elevator. Now you've got one where everything's in a ring. I mean, the spider one I mentioned, the last scenario, the spider is one giant card in the middle with 4 leg cards that you kind of move around this rondelle ring, and you're kind of hacking away at the leg every now and again while trying to cut the webs and stuff. It's like the genius that goes into that design. I mean, one of them I think was a car chase. How do you do a car chase in a card game? It's like, but somehow they managed to do it. Yeah, it works. All right.
Good.
Oh God, nearly on 2 hours. Yeah, we still got to do our ones and do honorable mentions. Oh well, you're stuck with us. Hope you like it, chaps.
Oh, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. However, it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise to anybody that's seen any of my top 10 lists. My favorite game, when we talk about expensive games, we mentioned Too Many Bones and buying all the stuff for Arkham Horror, etc. Pale in comparison to this game. I've probably spent more on this game and various expansions and bits for it than maybe 2/3 of my board game collection. It's the very big black box up there, and you can see one of my painted that I painted myself, one of my painted minis for us. This is the Phoenix. Of course, I'm talking Kingdom Death Monster. A game that is, at the moment, the big black box. It's a game that is notoriously difficult at the moment, although they are delivering the 1.6 to people. It's expensive to buy. It's expensive to continue down the hobby, the boutique hobby. And it's almost a hobby in and of itself, Kingdom Death Monster. The expansions, they go for about £100 a time, and there are lots of expansions. There's lots of stuff planned for it and in the pipeline. I think that Adam Poots, the designer, has had, and I've certainly backed one of the expansions, The Gambler's Chest, that has been back for maybe 2 or 3 years now, and it's still probably another 2 years away from being delivered to backers. There's inevitable delays with this. If you're a Kingdom Death Monster fan, then you're used to delays, but I adore this game. When we talk about campaign games, this is the ultimate campaign game. You have your various stages. You have your settlement phase where you're building up your settlement. Your people are procreating. You are building weapons and fashioning weapons and armor and spells, etc. You're gaining initiative. Your settlement is either growing or shrinking depending on how many people have died. The gods are not smiling upon you. Then you go into the hunt phase where you've picked a creature that you want to kind of track down. You have this hunt phase going through where you're going along this board.
The hell is that thing?
Yeah, that's a gorm. That's the gorm. He spits bile and piss at you, basically. So then you have, there we go. That's the phoenix that you can see my version of there. And then you have the showdown phase where you actually get into your 4 survivors battling the big creatures. And there we go. That's a white line that isn't very white there. And these showdowns can go on a long time. I think my longest showdown, bear in mind, this is just one part of a game or 1 year of a game. And the game is split up into, or the campaign is split up into lantern years. And I think they ran about 27 lantern years in a campaign. I've had one showdown against one monster that lasted nearly 3 hours. Basically, that's just my 4 survivors. And it was one of the most fantastic experiences. Solo, yeah. One of the most fantastic experiences. Your survivors are building up their strengths. You're strategizing on the map as to where you're going to attack this monster, how it's going to attack you, how it's going to retaliate against you. You've got almost this dungeon master-esque book of where you roll things and things happen. In the blink of an eye, your character that you've nurtured over 4 or 5 years can get their head bitten off, basically in the blink of an eye because you made a wrong move or the dice have come out badly against you. Everything is mitigable, but it is brutal as all hell. It is a campaign, 27 lantern years minimum, or thereabouts in a campaign. Campaign's going to take you many, many hours to complete, and you're going to tell this wonderful story if you get to the end of the campaign. There's nothing about this game that I do not like, apart from the price tag. There's nothing about this game that I do not like. I will spend an entire day at a time playing Kingdom Death Monster because I adore it that much.
It's a game that I need to learn. I will never have access to this game. Like, I'm not buying this game for how hard it is to get hold of. But I know so little about this game because all I ever see of it is the big miniatures. Yeah. So it's like, it instantly puts me on a downer thinking, oh, this game is just because the miniatures look awesome, which they do. No doubt about that. That Gorm was, what on earth was that thing? And it's got that dark theme. I mean, there was one model with a guy who's chopped a guy's leg off. I mean, perfect. Yeah. So it does the job for giving me a theme that I should adore, but I know nothing of its mechanics. It's like the mechanics on this game are just... Nobody talks about the mechanics. Nobody says how you actually fight this lion here. Nobody talks about whether there's a card system or dice. All I ever see is this picture, which is 3 people on a map, which doesn't have any terrain on it for some reason, and this which seems oversized, and the lion. That's all anybody will show of the gameplay. It's such a secretive game.
So there's generally 4 survivors that go into the showdown. Excuse me. And the map, depending on what happens and how the map is generated for you and what the showdown is, you'll put various elements of terrain on there. And there are many different elements you can put on there, from trees, bushes, insects, other creatures, lava, etc. They all have an interaction on there as well. There are all things that can happen that can either impede or help yours or the creature's movement that you're doing there. In terms of the combat, the creature is a card-based AI system, and your aim by delivering damage to this creature is to reduce its AI deck down to 0. So when you get through to damaging it, then you're doing it. It's dice-based from your perspective, based on your skills and your equipment and your armor that you've built up over time, basically. Simple things like you got on the first White Lion one, you go in literally, your 4 survivors are going into battle with just wearing loincloths and having a piece of rock in their hands, and they've got to try and defeat this lion, this level 1 White Lion. First time I played
level 1, yeah.
I mean, yeah, because each creature has different levels, and they get harder and harder as you go through the game.
Maybe you've got to teach me on TTS or so, because people are talking about there's a TTS mod for it, apparently. Maybe that's the only way I could get into it.
So they mentioned Townsfolk Tussle here. I think Townsfolk Tussle is the showdown, so it's the battle element. It's none of the city build, not the settlement building or the hunt, just the battle element. I played Townsfolk Tussle on TTS when it came to Kickstarter. Maybe it's because I loved Kingdom Death Monster, but Townsfolk Tussle didn't give me that same kind of feel. This just a work of art.
Like I say, I can't even comment because I don't know it. It's like nobody's showed it to me. Nobody's explained it as much. I mean, you're probably giving the most detailed explanation I've ever heard of it ever. From even like the fans of this game, like don't want to talk about it. It's like, yeah, we get it. It's hush hush, but they're all saying you've got to play it. It's like we would, but you won't show us. Even the publisher won't make this readily available for us. So what do you expect us to do? It's like we want to, but you won't let us. I don't know, but one day maybe it does. Like I say, the theme alone would interest me enough. Dark, gritty, bloody. I'll go with it. All right, number one for me. It's probably not a surprise to a lot of people. Yes, I will play this. Oh, shut, Mark. I saw you roll the eyes there. Probably one of my most played games of last year. I will play it multiplayer, and I have enjoyed it multiplayer, but it's with specific people I know that I will play it multiplayer. Otherwise, most of the time, this is going to be solo. It won me over after 3 years of being taught it bad. Like 3 years ago, being taught it bad and not playing it since, and then deciding to bite the bullet, jump into it, and with a little bit of help from Greater Than Games, yeah, it wasn't that difficult to suddenly go goo goo gaga for Spirit Island, which is, I can play this 2-player, I can play this multiplayer, but the fact that not only do I prefer this game solo, honestly, it's just the fact that it works solo. We mentioned things like Mansions of Madness and a few other ones before, that you can't really play it true solo. You can't play Sentinels true solo. You can't just have one person. It doesn't work. Even Nemesis, isn't as good one person as is two people. Street Masters, you can have just one person, which is a slight advantage it does have. The Arkham Horror LCGs, again, I can just have one person and it still works. Maybe tougher in some scenarios, but it still works. Spirit Island is another example. Yes, you can have synergy between those and you can play it two-handed. I don't often do that because it is quite a mental juggernaut to do that. But I can play this with one spirit, one small map, which is half the size of this, and still win. Still win scenarios. Granted, maybe you can't go up against a level 6 difficulty thing. I mean, to be honest, I can barely go above a difficulty 3. I'm not an expert at this game for the most part. But you've given me a game that's not only co-op, but wonderfully thematic for what it is. All the different variety of the spirits. A puzzle game even with the event deck and stuff, which adds a tiny bit of randomness in it. There is still a glorious puzzle here of when do I use this? When do I use this fast power? When shall I use the slow one? What card do I play? Which growth option do I pick? Do I let this place blight? And just say, what? Can't do anything about it. We'll move on to this. And which cards do I upgrade to? I can get one of these 4. Which one do I pick? Even just picking the 2 Spirit Islands, the 2 spirits, if you're going to play two-handed, like which one synergizes better? There are videos for this. I mean, Jonah's in the chat, for One Pit Wonder. She loves this game and so does her husband. You can get everybody's opinion as to what their favorite spirits are. In fact, they've done a video on this where they do a tier list of their favorites. I said I was going to do one at some point, and I probably will still do that, like a tier ranking of all the spirits I enjoy, because everybody's got different opinions over which ones they like. Here you go, Big Snake. All my favorite spirits are the ones who cause fear. It's all right killing invaders, but I want to scare the living daylights out of them. So give me the what do you call it? The bringer of nightmares and dreams, or whatever it's called. It's like, yeah, I can't actually kill you, but get off my island. It's like, where's the way? But you rolled your eyes. You're not the biggest Spirit Island fan, are you?
No, I think for a game that obviously a lot of people.
This is your too many bones. This is your too many bones for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think this was number one in the solo in the BGG top 200 solo games. It's a game that many people absolutely love. It's Mage Knight Island. That's what it is. But for me, I sold it just before Christmas. I've had it a while. I had the Branch and Claw expansion, and it just didn't hit the table for me. And first of all, look at the components. That's not the reason I don't like the game, but it definitely needs a game of this ilk that has so much love going for it. It needs better components, I know it deserves it. Even if I don't particularly like the game, it deserves better components. But that's not the reason I don't like it.
I don't deny that. Yeah, I mean, I would like these plastic things to be replaced. I've got upgraded components for it that Greater Than Games did. It doesn't upgrade the miniatures, unfortunately, but it does give you wooden tokens and things for blight and the things, which does improve it. But yeah, I would like a better sculpts, honestly.
But in terms of gameplay, there's nothing wrong with Spirit Island. It just didn't just strike a chord with me. And I tried it and so wanted to love it because I love Mage Knight. And I thought this is a game I really, I'm going to enjoy. And maybe in the 13, 14 times I played it solo, I had an okay time. But I was always thinking I want to be playing something else. It just didn't hit it for me. I understand why it works for people. I just can't explain why Spirit Island. I wish it worked for me the way that it worked for other people. It's got everything in this game that I like in a game, and it's got the anti-colonialism theme, which I really, really like being in games as well. But for whatever reason, it just didn't hit it, and it was on and off my sale list throughout all of last year. Then the back end of last year, I decided it was time for it to go. So I got rid of Spirit Island, and I don't regret the decision. If I had the chance to play it again in the future, I would play it, but it's not a game I would choose to play at all.
Which is fair enough. It's not for everyone. I 10 out of 10. It's one of my. It was my favorite top 100. Certainly, I've been playing it a lot. It's been a while since I put it to the table last, but when I got it last April, I was like, I must have played it nearly 20 times in the space of 2 months, and I just don't do that for many games. Like every time I played it, I wanted to play it again. And a solo game of this can be relatively quick, not just because it goes badly for you, but if you know what you're doing, you can get through a solo game in a reasonable length of time, depending on how much you overthink it. But
I think the last time I played it, I surprised myself by how quickly I won it by clearing everything. Basically, just having a bit of planning on this and kind of understanding how things are going to come out, it can help you greatly. And of course, depending on what spirits you play and what level you play as well. But it can play quite quickly. Yeah.
These spirits do love them. I mean, Oceans is another one of my favorites, and that just the idea of that, right, okay, the presence moves on and off the coastline just like waves do. The person designing the mechanics for these to fit with the theme of what the spirit is a genius. It's like a lot of people do not think about the theme of a particular character and that, but here they all make sense. Like this ocean sucks on dry land. You have to accept it, especially if you're playing this one solo, that you're going to struggle with the inland areas. But drowning people on the coastline is just so satisfied, especially when you're playing with another player and they just feed you stuff. I've had great multiplayer games where I'm sort of sat there just basically like Kirby on the side of the table with that beam, just as people just push things into it. It's like, great, yep, that was nice. You're going to need some more of those. Jonas definitely wanting a ranking video. Yeah, I will do a spirit ranking video at some point. I need to get used to that tier maker software you were using, and I'll try something with it. Somebody asked a question on this. Where is it? Somebody said about what spirits I play or who do I like most. What spirits do you like to team up? I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I mean, I don't tend to play two-handed Spirit Island that much. If I'm going to pair people up, usually I'm like offense with defense or fear with control. I try to look at what characteristic they're good at and then pair them up that way.
Sure.
Oceans with River in Sunlight or whatever is a good one. River pushes things around the board. So you set River up in the inland and then they push everybody into Ocean. That works brilliantly. So there's a lot of customization for this. Not for everybody, but poor blimey, was I so shocked at how much just being taught this game properly made such a difference for enjoyment. Whew. Alrighty. 10 of those, just over 2 hours. But there were too many games that trying to whittle down my list was one of the hardest things I've had to do, which is probably one reason I've put off doing a solo games update for so long, because there's just too many. I like playing games with other people, and I will advocate that constantly, and I'm the first person to say, look, not every game needs a solo mode. Seriously, stop trying to shoehorn one in there, particularly with Euro games. Most Euro games I don't think warrant solo modes, because you want that competitive thing with other players. There's multiplayer solitaire, but still I kind of want the other player there. With these ones, like a lot of my list, these thematic ones, yes, I can enjoy the story with other players, but say This War of Mine, there's so little reason to play This War of Mine with any more than solo. Because you just basically got an extra character, but you're still just moving the same people. Sure. So they work for me in that respect.
I think the really interesting thing was there was only one crossover, and I think that just shows the kind of length and breadth of the solo gaming world as it's evolved over the last few years. Yes, COVID has helped, but it's catering for so many different tastes these days as well. And the fact that you and I, who we speak fairly regularly, we play some of the same games together, but we have wildly different tastes. And not one point did I look at any of your games and say, that's a rubbish game. I knew why the game wasn't for me, but not one point did I think, God, why do you like that? And I think it's great that
similar.
I don't think there's anybody out there that would have an exact same top 10 list as you or I. There would be some variation in there, and I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, second favorite wasn't mentioned, Super Skill Pinball. A, I've not played it, but B, I have burnt out so much on roll and writes that no roll and write is ever going to make my solo game list. Although somebody still needs to teach me Hadrian's Wall, because people will not stop badgering me about that game. It's like, I'm not expecting to love Hadrian's Wall, but I'll try it. I will give it a try. But if people want it, like I say, Mark was up for it as well. At some point, we need to do like top 10 solo Euro games, like specifically, because even though you had some Euros on your list, you didn't have a ton.
No,
and most of these games would be considered thematic Amerifrash, and most of mine will be considered that. I mean, I'd need to ask the question: is Spirit Island a Euro game? I don't know if it is or not, but before I did that list, but certainly there are a bunch of Euro games that I had on my list here. I mean, Kanban would have fitted. The Seven Wonders dual variant for solo is really good. On the Underground, Viscounts, Underfalling Skies, Cascadia, Chronicles, Detective, Empires of the North, Roleplayer Adventures, Edge of Darkness, Zaya was another one. There's a lot of good solo games that we couldn't fit. And some of these are Euros that I just think, maybe you do need a separate list to cover Euro solo modes, because it just...
You're absolutely right. I think Euros, the solo modes for Euros are evolving all the time. You look at the Lacerda ones. I've got all the Lacerda games. I've played them all solo to varying degrees of success within that. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy them, but I like the fact that Euros are starting to have this interaction now. And yes, it may take a David Turksy decision tree to make it a meaningful and integrated process, but you can get something as relatively simple as well in something like Dwellings of Eldervale, which is just turning your card over and seeing how it impacts the board and creating a dynamic puzzle. So I think we'll see some more growth. It'd be interesting to see some of the to do a top 10 Euro solo list and just see what happens there. I know Eggia says no hype for the new Final Girl. It was in my top 10 list I did last week of solo games released in 2021. It was my number 3 solo game. It's not made the top 10 list yet. I haven't had it long enough for it to make any kind of meaningful all-time top 10 list. I've only played it a handful of times so far. It's a pure solo game and a great pure solo experience that is random and it is swingy and it won't be for everybody, but it is a great game if you like that kind of game, and certainly thematically it hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, I mean, I did consider Hostage Negotiator as well, because I've not played Final Girl, obviously, because I didn't back that one, but I've still got Hostage Negotiator, and that's another solo game. There's even the legendary ones we mentioned, they're all still good. There's just too many. Class Budget, you need to make 2 solo lists, Euro and question mark, but I can't see what else you would do. I don't tend to do variants much, so you can't do a variant only list. This is effectively my thematic Euros top 10, because I think every single one on this list is thematic in some respect. Most of that. So there's room for a top 10 Euro where I can say the theme isn't necessarily a forefront, but I can't imagine what other type of solo category you could do.
I suppose you could do dungeon crawlers or adventures or something.
But then that's what most of this list was.
It is really, absolutely, looking around.
There's room for a Euro one, which I think we should do. But I don't see another category. But I don't know. Put something in the comments, people, if you got any idea on that. Pure solos list. I don't know, because there aren't that many games I've got or have played that are just solo. Most of them will be soloable. I mean, I can think of 3 that are games I really like that are true solo, that you cannot play with any other player count. Other than that, though, not many. There's not a huge amount of them, frankly.
Two solo games when they come out tend to be smaller box games more than big, large experience games, if you like.
And they don't get much buzz. People talk about a game called Leaving Earth, but then I don't think that's true solo. I think you can play that with more players. It's just nobody does, So there's...
So John's mentioned Coffee Roaster, Underfalling Skies. I think there's also...
and Hostage Negotiator. What else is Friday?
Final Girl, Friday. Those kind of games. Yeah, I'm sure I just thought of another one that I've completely forgot as well.
I wouldn't be able to do 10. No way.
No, I don't think 10. Warp's Edge, that was the other one. So CK's just mentioned Warp's Edge. So yeah.
Okay.
So I think, but Euro games would be interesting to do a top 10 Euro list. I think, we maybe wait until Perseverance has been delivered and see where that fits in people's list, because that's getting delivered, I think, March time-ish, isn't it?
Well, you're going to wait till... Well, you don't want to do it sooner than then?
Maybe.
We can do it a lot sooner than that, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I'm sure we can. Yeah.
Well, you pick a date, whatever. You know I'm free in that. So
we'll sort it.
Anyways, right, we got to wrap this up and get going, people. So thanks for joining us, whether you're at the start, middle, or end, or you haven't even watched this yet and you're just going to watch it in bits. I know 2.25 hours is long, but, you know, there's a lot to talk about, and solo games are a big discussion topic with us too.
We didn't even get around to our honourable mentions that we were going to talk about as well. So we'll maybe do a solo list of games that will never make a top 10. That are just pure fun. Yeah.
Maybe we'll just bolt it on the Euro one or so. I mean, I mentioned a bunch that were on my shortlist there. They're effectively honourable mentions. I suppose, like, you can mention it, but we'll try and fit that in on the next one.
The next one. Perfect.
What about that? So without further ado, like I say, it's always a game. It's always... We've been talking for 2 hours. I've lost my train of thought. Now, it's only a game. That's the best way to do it. But failing that, don't forget to check out Mark's channel. Where can we find you?
So it's Not Board Gaming, that's BORED. It's YouTube, solo and soloable based channel, does reviews, previews, unboxings, etc. Last year was heavily skewed towards Kickstarter previews. This year I want to get back into doing more reviews as well. Pure solo games and solo gaming. Tend to release a video about once every 10 days or so. So do check out Not Board Gaming. Been going just over 2 years now with about just under 4,000 subscribers. So it is growing. And you can see my latest video is the top 10 solo games that were released in 2020.
Yeah, get that one to watch. That one to watch, because there's a lot of... there's a bunch of them that I'm like, oh yeah, that could work. So, and of course, he's got views. So Role Player Adventures was a good one as well. But then Final Girl, Euphia, both of us shared the same thoughts on Doing House Secrets. So there's plenty there. But a lot of good, and obviously, like I said I wasn't the biggest fan of Descent, so he's got better thoughts on that. So by all means, check it out. All right, that's it for us. Thanks, Joe. I can see all the comments. Thank you for there. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.
Bye, everybody. Bye.